Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the velvet hush of an ancient Persian townhouse, where a woman paces barefoot through polished wooden halls that creak just enough to make you glance over your shoulder. The air is sweet with fig blossoms and distant incense, but something else lingers, a hush that feels watched. You're waiting not for your husband, he's been gone for weeks, but for a rustle of wings. Outside, twilight falls like a shawl over Isfahan. The domes glow with borrowed light from a fading sun, and behind your shuttered window the call to prayer ripples across tiled roofs like a silk ribbon tugged by wind. Still, you don't move. You're listening. Tonight the sound doesn't come. No flutter, no trill. Just the memory of it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake enough, drop your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift your weight and slip one hand into the pocket of your robe. Velvet deep blue stitched with a pattern only visible when the light catches it just right. A gift from your husband the last time he came back from Basra? That was months ago. The pockets were empty then, but now one hides a plum pit smoothed by worry. Not for eating, just turning. Turning. The silence is almost theatrical. Somewhere beyond the courtyard, someone is chopping herbs za'atar, maybe? You'd know the rhythm anywhere. The kitchen staff still work, still hum, but no one speaks to you unless you ask. And you don't ask often anymore. The room to your left used to be the nursery. It never saw a child. In the next room, the birdcage hangs near a sun-warmed wall. Empty. But you don't look. You're not ready yet. Instead, you go barefoot toward the wooden doors that lead to the outer corridor. Not the street, not yet. Just the long, narrow hall that once guided travelers from front gate to family quarters. Your steps fall soft. You've walked this way 1,000 times, and still the sound of your soles on wood feels like an intrusion. The house, your husband's house, is old. It belonged to his father before him, and perhaps to a vizier before that. The ceilings curve high like the belly of a ship, and windows are latticed with mashrabia that let in sun but guard every gaze. You once loved the light here, how it danced on the floor in gold-tipped patterns. Now it just reminds you of how slowly the days move. Historians still argue whether the elite women of Isfahan led secluded, solitary lives or moved freely within their social circles. But you are both truth and contradiction. You have friends, yes, but their visits grow shorter. You are not forbidden to speak, but few words feel safe. Even your bird, the only creature you told everything to knew when to hush its voice. Back when it arrived, the house felt livelier. A gift from your husband's trade partner in Muscat. The bird was unlike anything from the local market. Not the usual green parrot or soft-throated nightingale. No, this one bore feathers the color of bruised plum and ocean foam. Its eyes, one green one, amber glinted like polished glass. You named it Garib, meaning stranger. Your husband didn't ask why. Garib mimicked everything. The splash of water in your washing bowl. The cough of the steward who always pretended not to notice you. Even your laugh once, though you hadn't laughed since the year before. A feathered mirror and smarter than it let on. Quirky fact. In certain coastal cities, noblewomen were said to train birds to recite full love poems. Scandalous. Yet entirely true, well documented in court scrolls and by horrified monks who thought it unholy. You tried too, not with poetry but with lullabies. Soft, sad ones. Not for a child. For yourself. Now you reach the end of the hall and touch the carved frame of the lattice door. The wood smells faintly of rose oil dust and something bitter cedar maybe. You remember your husband instructing the steward to oil the hinges with apricot kernel. That was his one tender indulgence, that nothing in the house should groan. You open it slowly, no sound, just the hush of the corridor. The courtyard beyond is quiet, save for the burble of the fountain still running still, pretending someone listens. You lean against the column and look up. The sky is that liminal shade between peach and indigo, like a pomegranate bleeding into milk. And then you swear it, you hear wings. A flutter. Faint. But nothing comes. Maybe it was your sleeve brushing the doorframe, or maybe it was memory stitched into air. You stay a while, letting the quiet settle back around you like a second robe. You press the plum pit into your palm and feel the ridges, like a fingerprint almost. When the bird first arrived, you had no idea how much it would change your rhythm, how its voice would begin to echo things you never said aloud, how it would make the walls feel less like skin and more like bone. But tonight the house feels full of ghosts again. Not the frightening kind. Just soft. Remembered. Dust-shaped. You sigh not because you're tired, but because your breath needs somewhere to go. From the far edge of the courtyard, high above the domed roof, you think you hear a whistle. A single note. One that doesn't belong to any human throat. You stay rooted to the stone threshold, listening harder now, straining past the fountains and the clink of kitchen tools. The note has vanished, but not entirely. It left a shape behind a ghost of a sound, hanging like jasmine in the dusk air. Your fingers graze the carved frame, following the ridges of date palms and tulips etched by hands long since buried. The doorway smells of time, sun-warmed dust, old wood, and something you can't name but always recognize. Maybe it's what silence smells like. You step into the courtyard and cross the mosaic tiles. Pale turquoise and blue under your feet, faded like a memory retold too often. They say Isfahan was once called half the world, a name so grand you'd expect fireworks, maybe armies of dancers, or a sky paved in gold. Instead, it's just you and your slippers. The far door is closed. You know behind it is the prayer alcove rarely used since your husband began holding his devotions with the caravan. Trade, he says, is a sacred rhythm too. You wonder if he ever prays for you. The Songbird arrived 2 years ago in a reed cage wrapped in fabric, nestled beside Clove's nutmeg and a vial of something labeled musked amber. Its feathers shimmered not just with color, but with intent. It studied you with the weary patience of something older than it looked. Like a child born with the sigh of a grandmother, already stitched into its throat. You named it Gharib that first night. Stranger. Fitting, you thought. After all, you were a stranger in this house, too. Back then, your husband had still touched your hand without calculation. You used to sleep beside him and count his breaths. Now, he rarely sleeps here at all. Trade routes grew longer. Ships took longer to unload. Or so he said. Your marriage wasn't unusual. Historians still argue whether women like you, wives of wealthy Persian merchants, held real authority in the home or were just ornamented shadows. Truth is, you wield power quietly, with whispers, with glances, with the way you taught your bird to speak when no one was watching. At first it sang nonsense. Syllables, whistles, chattering rhythms you didn't understand. But over time it began to echo things. Your phrases, the sharp tone of your nursemaid, the clatter of beads when you dressed. And once one evening, as you sat plucking mint leaves in the sun, it chirped a perfect imitation of your mother's voice, saying, "Leave the stems, they'll grow bitter." You dropped the bowl. That was the first time it scared you, not because it got the words wrong, but because it got them exactly right. Down to the rhythm of her breath. Quirky tidbit. In some parts of the Sassanid Empire, birds were thought to be the reincarnations of relatives. Some families even arranged for favored parrots to be passed down like jewelry. You remember reading that once and thinking, at least jewelry doesn't talk back. But your bird never mocked you. It watched. It waited. It sang only what it thought you needed. You glance up at the window lattice above the inner hall. That's where the cage used to hang, catching the morning light. You always opened the wooden shutter just enough to let warmth in. Gharib would trill feathers puffed as though it could smell the city waking up. It wasn't just a bird, it became your confidant. You whispered secrets into its downy wings when the house was empty, and it repeated them back with gentler edges like the way dreams soften harsh memories. The first time your husband heard it mimic your voice, he laughed. "You've trained it well," he said. "Soon it will make arguments for you." You smiled as though you weren't sure it was a joke. In time, he stopped laughing. The bird picked up too much. Sometimes things you didn't remember saying, or hadn't said aloud. One afternoon it whispered, "He's not alone." Just that. And then returned to chirping a nursery tune. You hadn't spoken that sentence not to anyone, but you had thought it, late at night more than once. Especially after the third letter arrived from Baghdad, unsigned and scented with something too floral to be meant for him. That night, you moved the cage closer to your sleeping mat. You whispered nothing to the bird, but you didn't sleep at all. Neither did it. You reach the corner of the courtyard where a pomegranate tree grows twisted but determined. It only gives fruit in odd years and only when the winters are dry. This year it blossomed, but the fruit split too early. Inside the red rind, the seeds were pale. You took that as a sign. You sit on the low stone ledge near its roots. There, tucked behind the leaves, is the small ceramic bowl you once placed for Gharib to bathe in. The water has long since evaporated, leaving only a fine ring of white mineral dust. You dip your finger in it anyway. Salt, dust, a memory. You tilt your head back and sigh. No flutter, no rustle. Sometimes you wonder if the bird left or was taken. Your husband returned from one of his journeys, bringing with him a new servant. Young, silent, with careful hands and eyes that flicked toward the cage too often. That same week, Gharib stopped singing. Then one morning the cage was open, the perch still swinging. Your husband insisted you must have forgotten to latch it. "You've been distracted lately," he said. "Dreaming too much. You hadn't been dreaming. You were wide awake, every night watching, listening, and still you listen." From somewhere in the city, maybe the hammam domes, maybe the rooftops, a sound rises. Not a song, but a call. A note held just a moment too long. Your breath stills. That note, it could be her. Gharib. Or it could be a night breeze catching a shudder. You stand again slowly. You've gotten used to not hoping, but tonight something feels different. Not louder, not brighter, just possible. The possibility keeps you awake longer than you intend. You drift through the corridors like a thread being pulled, half believing that if you move quietly enough, she'll return. That the soft pad of your steps, the hush of your robe, brushing mosaic might lure her out of hiding. In the room where the bird cage still hangs, emptied but untouched, you stand still beneath it. The cage door swings slightly as if disturbed by a recent breeze. Or perhaps memory. You reach up and stop it with your finger. It clicks gently against the brass latch. You close it. There. That's better. Back when Garib first arrived, you couldn't decide whether to keep her in the main hall or the bedroom. You chose the bedroom. A scandal according to your old nursemaid. A bird by your bed means a ghost in your dreams she had whispered once, rubbing sesame oil into your scalp. You'd laughed, then let her haunt me. And she had, in the gentlest ways. Historians still argue whether women in 10th century Persia were allowed to own animals outright, or if all property technically belonged to their male guardians. But it didn't matter. Garib had been yours. You fed her, taught her songs, confided things you wouldn't dare put to parchment. Some nights you'd wake to find her muttering in her sleep, your sleep mimicking your breathing, your sighs, your soft, sad hums. You didn't realize how often you sang to yourself until she began doing it for you. And now, the silence feels like betrayal. You move past the cage into the room beyond the library, though it holds only 3 shelves of books, and a chest full of folded papers most never read. Your husband collected texts the way others collected incense, more for display than use. You, however, read them all. In secret, of course. It's easier to be underestimated. There on the lowest shelf is the scroll with the ink-stained corner, the one you dropped in surprise when Garib first sang your mother's voice. You lift it out now. The parchment is dry and curls slightly at the edges. The writing is in 3 languages, Arabic, Persian, and something older. Possibly Syriac. You don't read the last one, but the illustrations are clear birds in cages above them. Women in high towers, each line of song connecting them like threads on a loom. You trace the images with a fingertip. The final drawing shows an open cage and a woman walking into the distance barefoot holding a single feather. You close the scroll gently. Quirky fact. In some Persian folklore, birds are not just messengers but record keepers. Tiny scribes who carry the soul's truths from one world to another. Certain families believed birds heard every lie spoken in their homes, which is maybe why you once caught a servant bowing to Garib and asking her forgiveness. You never asked what he'd done. Some things are better left unsaid. You rise and walk back to your own chamber. The lamp by your bed burns low, casting gold light that flickers like candlelight on water. You lie down but leave the window lattice open. Maybe the breeze will carry your thoughts to wherever she's hiding, if she's hiding. You close your eyes, but the memories don't sleep. You remember the first time your husband took you to the harbor. He wanted to show you the ships, the size of them, the scale of his success. You barely noticed. You were watching the gulls so loud, so free. One landed near you and stared until you tossed it a date pit. It swallowed it whole and flew away. You remember wishing you could follow it, just for an hour. Instead, you were ushered back to the litterhem, lifted by servants' eyes averted. You were valuable. Therefore you were protected. Therefore you were hidden. Garib, though she was small, quick, impossible to pin. She would slip from finger to finger, shoulder to curtain rod, teasing, elusive. And yet somehow she always came back. Until she didn't. And your husband hadn't seemed surprised. That night he claimed you must have left the cage open. Said it with one raised brow, not quite accusing, but not innocent either. Then he had the cage moved to the window and said, "Perhaps she'll return if she misses the view." You didn't ask him why the cage latch was found beneath the rug, or why the reed floor mat was pressed down in a shape the exact size of a boot. You just nodded and waited. Now the lamp flickers again and you hear that sound. Not quite a song, a note, a memory pretending to be real. It draws you up from your resting place and toward the open lattice. You press your face close to it and peer out into the night. There on the rooftop of the bathhouse next door, you see a shadow dart across the moonlight. Too large for a sparrow, too graceful for a pigeon. Your heart jumps and you scold it. Foolish, it could be anything, could be nothing, but in the quiet that follows, you hear a whisper, your own voice. Carried through the air. A fragment of a lullaby you used to hum while brushing your hair. You didn't hum it today, she did. You don't move right away. The night stretches long and low around you as if holding its breath. You remain at the window, unmoving, head tilted, listening for any sign that the echo wasn't imagined. A creak in the floor, a whistle, a feather against stone. Nothing follows, just the rustling hush of wind, threading through courtyard trees and the distant murmur of someone's late prayer. Still, the note had been yours. Or rather, it had been Garib's imitation of your voice singing that lullaby. One you hadn't hummed in weeks. The rhythm too precise to be coincidence. The timing too cruel to be comfort. You lean forward until your forehead rests against the mashrabia lattice cool wood, grounding your spinning thoughts. Below, the courtyard is empty, save for the pomegranate tree and the bowl of evaporated memory. When you finally pull away, it's with the quiet grace of someone slipping out of a dream. Your robe whispers as you turn. You don't light another lamp. The darkness knows your shape by now. You cross the room and open the carved door to the stairwell that leads to the roof. The stone beneath your feet is cool but not cold, worn smooth by centuries of cautious footsteps. You climb slowly, carefully. Each step counts. Not because of the height, though it's dizzying, but because you haven't set foot on this stairway in months. The last time was during the rain festival. You'd stood under an oilskin awning while your husband and his trade partners debated the price of indigo and cotton bolts. You'd stared out across the domes of the bathhouses and wondered how many rooftops had once heard laughter music or secrets spoken into the wind. Tonight the roof is empty. The tiles radiate heat left over from the day. The sky is open deep violet with streaks of cloud, and the city hums below like a sleeping animal. You listen, and then you hear it again. Not far, not near, somewhere in between. A trilling note followed by a rhythm too practiced to be wild. Not a nightjar, not a pigeon, and certainly not an accident. It's Garib, or someone pretending to be her. You cross the rooftop carefully, avoiding the loose tiles near the water barrels. From this vantage, you can see into the neighbor's courtyard, a narrow square lined with broken pots and drying laundry. And on the far parapet wall, you glimpse it. Not a full silhouette, just a flicker. The curve of a bird's back. A glint of green. A tail feather that dips and vanishes. Then silence again. You sit on the edge of the roof, heart pulsing with quiet urgency. Not panic, just presence. Historians still argue whether Persian townhouses were designed to isolate or to protect. The answer depends on who was building, who was hiding, and who was watching. Tonight you feel both hidden and seen, both caged and aloft. You look up and see the stars as the bird might see them, distant, cold, unknowable. You remember something the calligrapher's wife once said over tea between stories of poisoned ink and forgotten wives. Birds don't stay where they aren't heard. You'd laugh then, but it hadn't been a joke. Quirky tidbit. In some rural provinces, women used to tie tiny copper bells to their birds' feet, not to track them, but to give them rhythm. It was said the right bell note could call a bird back from 1,000 miles away. You had no bell, only your voice and memory. You begin to hum again softly, the same lullaby, the one Garib had returned to you just moments ago. Your voice cracks a little, but the tune holds. You wait. At first, nothing, then a flutter. Behind you. You don't turn quickly, you know better. Just a shift in your weight, a widening of your breath. Slowly you glance over your shoulder. There on the broken rim of the rain jar is a feather. Not a bird. Just a single feather. Indigo and gray with a curl at the edge like a question mark. You reach for it. It's real. Smooth and warm from the air, light as a breath. You press it between your palms and close your eyes. She was here. And more than that, she heard you. You stay on the roof until the stars begin to fade, until the first call to prayer rises from the minaret and shivers through the cool air like a thread of gold. Then slowly you rise and make your way back down the stairs. Each step feels softer, like walking backward through time. You don't light a lamp as you pass through the corridor. You don't need one. The cage remains empty, but you don't close it this time. You leave it open. Just a little, in case she wants to come home. Or in case you decide not to. The next morning the household stirs as usual, sleepy servants creaking open shutters, the steward grumbling over oil rations and the rhythmic slap of dough being kneaded in the courtyard kitchen. You lie still facing the pale strip of light that crawls across the ceiling beams. You don't move. Not yet. You're still with her in that hush of rooftop silence and the weightless curve of a feather pressed between your palms. Eventually your feet find the floor. The pomegranate tree outside glows in the early sun, its leaves trembling with the breeze that seems to know something you don't. You move to the window. Nothing sits on the sill. No flutter. No shadow. But absence feels different today. Not hollow, just wide like the space before music begins. Downstairs, the courtyard buzzes with the quiet mechanics of domestic life. Pots are being washed, lanterns trimmed. Someone laughs, a servant maybe, or the neighbor's daughter. You pause in the hallway and listen. Not for your bird, for yourself. You turn instead toward the storeroom, the one room in the house your husband never visits. It was once used to dry citrus peels and hibiscus petals, but now it's your sanctuary. You've turned it into a place for little rebellions. Inside, you light a small clay lamp and sit cross-legged on a rug embroidered with tiny silver cypress trees. In the corner, hidden beneath the folded cloth, is the reed box where you keep her feathers. Yes, her feathers. Not just feathers. You've been collecting them for months. She'd drop them in her bath, tuck them between books, nestle them into folds of your robe like hidden punctuation marks. There are over 20 now in shades from ash gray to gold-streaked violet. You press them between pages of your journal or stitch them behind the hems of your veils, tokens of memory no one can confiscate. You pull one out now. Pale green. Lighter than air. A thought crosses your mind. Maybe she isn't just a bird. Maybe she's something older, wiser. A spy for the gods, perhaps. Or a mirror they sent to show you your own voice. Historians still argue whether women in medieval Persia were active agents of their own narrative, or merely storytellers locked in ornamental cages. You think the answer is both. You're a teller of tales, but now one of them is starting to tell itself back to you. Your fingers trail the weave of the rug as you hum again, this time softly enough that even the walls might miss it. But your skin remembers. Your voice vibrates through your ribs, echoing in places you'd forgotten had hollow spaces. And then a knock. Not loud, just a soft tap against the outer hallway door. You rise and cross to it, slipping the latch free. It creaks despite the apricot oil. Standing there is the new servant, the young one with eyes like scorched almonds and a manner too quiet to be comfortable. He doesn't speak, just holds out a bowl. Inside, pomegranate seeds glistening like rubies, unusual this early in the season. You take it. He nods and leaves without a word. You close the door. The fruit is cool but not cold. You sit again on the rug and lift a single seed to your lips. Sweet. Sharp. Alive. You remember something your nursemaid once muttered while crushing seeds with sugar and mint. Each one's a promise kept or broken. You eat 2. Leave the rest. Promises shouldn't be greedy. Quirky tidbit. In some palace kitchens, cooks would slip tiny love notes between the pomegranate seeds served to royal concubines. It was said the juice would stain the message onto the fingers of anyone who handled it. Evidence whether or not you read it. You wash your hands. By afternoon, the courtyard fills with scent rosewater from the laundry pots, cardamom from the tea tray, and a hint of sandalwood from the silk shawl you've chosen to wear her favorite. Or rather the one she used to mimic by nuzzling into its folds, crooning like a baby dove. You drape it now over your shoulders as you sit near the birdcage once more. You leave the latch open again, a silent invitation. And as you sit, you write not letters to your husband, not pages for safekeeping, but lines for her. Songs she used to repeat, verses you once mumbled during heat-slicked evenings. You write them on linen scraps. Roll them small. Tuck them into the folds of your robe. If she returns, maybe she'll read them. Or maybe someone else will. Maybe the wind will. Night comes again. No wings, no trill. But as you lie down to sleep, your pillow carries the faintest trace of down one feather, impossibly small, tucked beneath the fabric, as though a dream tried to leave a calling card. You don't touch it. You just smile. And hum one last note. Morning comes in layers. First, the call to prayer floating through the lattice like an ancient lullaby in reverse meant not to put you to sleep, but to wake the soul. Then the rustle of the olive tree in the alley behind your courtyard, its leaves like soft chimes when the breeze finds them just right. And then finally the sound you didn't know you were waiting for. Not bird song. Footsteps. Not your husband's. No, his gait is too heavy, too certain of itself. This is lighter. Hesitant. Pausing near your chamber door. You sit up slowly. The light is golden thick through the shutters. You wrap your shawl around your shoulders and step into the hallway. There, just outside the threshold, is a folded square of parchment. No seal, no handwriting on the outside. You crouch and pick it up, heart rising. Inside 4 words. Not yours, but familiar. She listens when you hum. You stare at it. It could mean anything. It could be a servant's prank, a neighbor's mischief, or a shadowy message smuggled through unseen channels. But you know who it's meant for, and who it's from. Somewhere nearby, someone else has heard her too. You fold the parchment and slide it into your sleeve. Historians still argue whether private messages like these cryptic, unsigned notes slipped between latticework and jasmine branches were the domain of love espionage or rebellion. Likely all 3. Women learned long ago how to say everything without ever raising their voices. You head toward the rear gallery of the house where the morning sun warms the stone columns and turns the floor into rippled light. You carry the note, but you do not rush. That would break the spell. By the time you reach the courtyard, breakfast has already been laid. Dried dates, flatbread slices of melon dusted with salt. The birdcage is still empty. You pour little rose water into the tiny dish by the perch, just in case. And then you do something bold. You begin to sing. Not a full song, just one line. The one she always echoed perfectly. The one your mother used to hush you with during dust storms. The one you've never spoken in front of the household before. The words fall soft like the first touch of rain on a dry roof. You pause. Nothing. Then a whisper from the upper balcony. You look up. There she is. Not perched on the rail. Not fully visible, but there, wings tucked. Head-tilted feathers shining like silk bruises in the sun. Garib, alive, watching. And then she vanishes. Not flown away. Just stepped back hidden again. You don't chase her. That's not the game. Instead, you finish the line. Later that day, the calligrapher's wife visits. She arrives unannounced, as always, bearing tea and fresh apricot jam and a parcel wrapped in cloth. Her eyes flicker toward the cage now moved slightly to face the courtyard. Still empty, she asks, though her voice carries the lilt of someone who knows more than she should. You nod. For now. She sits and begins to unwrap the parcel. Inside a book. Not one from the libraries. A hand-bound volume, its cover faded corners curled. You recognize it immediately. It belonged to her father, once rumored to be part of a secret school that taught women calligraphy under the guise of embroidery lessons. She hands it to you. She'd like this, she says. Your visitor. You feel your throat tighten. I don't know what you mean, but of course you do. The calligrapher's wife smiles gently. You'll know when the time is right. She pours the tea. Quirky little thing my grandmother used to say, birds never choose a new song unless they've heard it in a dream 3 times. I wonder what yours is dreaming of. You sip the tea. It tastes like sage and something else, bitterness edged with fire. She leaves before dusk. You carry the book into the storeroom and sit on the rug tracing the faded characters with your fingertips. Inside are drawings more birds, but not cages this time. Trees, arches. Women sitting beneath them weaving words into silk. You hum again. This time from outside the lattice a trill. Not echo, not imitation. Reply. The next night you barely sleep. You lie still beneath the silk sheets watching the shadow play on the ceiling lantern, light flickering through the mashrabia, casting shifting webs above you. But your thoughts are elsewhere. With her. Each hour that passes you imagine the weight of her on your shoulder. Again the brush of wingtip to cheek the sharp pause before she opened her beak to offer you your own words back, softened, reshaped as if by mercy. You rise before the dawn call and wrap yourself in your thinnest robe. Not for warmth, it's already warm, but for modesty. The house still slumbers save for the kitchen boy snoring in the hallway, and the old nursemaid muttering nonsense in her dreams. You tiptoe to the storeroom. By habit, you light the clay lamp, but the morning seeps in faster than the flame. The air smells faintly of dried mint and dust. You retrieve the book, the one gifted yesterday, the one with the birds and trees. You've barely scratched its pages. Flipping gently, you pause at a new image. A woman kneeling beside a stream, her hand stretched toward a creature in the reeds. Not quite a bird. Not quite human. Its eyes mirror hers. Between them hangs a thread not rope, not chain woven of letters. The caption beneath, "We speak what we dare not say." You breathe the words aloud and the room answers. From the high beam a flutter. A settling. The soft rustle of talons on wood. She's here. You don't look up. You wait. A heartbeat. 2. And then she listens when you hum, she says. The words are your own, but the voice is not. You glance upward slowly. Garib perches on the beam feathers, sleek and wild as ever. Her eyes one green one. Amber fix you with an intelligence too clear to be comfortable. She listens, she repeats, then tilts her head and adds when you whisper too. You almost laugh, almost cry. Instead, you bow your head and whisper, "Welcome home." Historians still argue whether mimicking birds truly understood the language they echoed, or simply stitched sounds into patterns like thread into cloth. But you know better. You've always known. Garib chose her words, not out of repetition, out of recognition. You sit. She hops lower to the shelf just above your shoulder. She says nothing. Neither do you. The silence is full. Then, just as you're about to rise and fetch her favorite fig seeds, she speaks again. New man. Smells wrong. Your blood runs cold. New man, you repeat. New man. Smells wrong. She echoes, then clicks her beak twice the sound she only ever made when displeased. You remember the servant. The quiet one who brought the pomegranate seeds. The one who watches everything without ever blinking. Your husband had said he came from the northern root, spoke little Persian, and was a gift from a distant sultan. You hadn't asked further. Gifts don't get questioned. They get unwrapped and endured. You rise now, heart tight. Garib flutters back to the beam watching. You move through the hallway with new eyes. You listen to the kitchen sounds, the clatter of copper, the splash of morning water. You pass the courtyard where the fountain babbles secrets too softly to decipher. No sign of the servant, but the air feels changed. He's here. Somewhere. Quirky fact. There's an old tale about a merchant's wife in Tabriz who trained her bird to spy on her household staff. They say the bird learned the names of every maid and memorized the sounds of keys unlocking doors. When questioned by the authorities, the wife claimed she'd never once left her chamber, but the bird had. Overheard, remembered, sung. You never believed that story. Until now. Back in your chamber, you slip the parchment from your sleeve, the note. She listens when you hum. You flip it over. A smudge. Faint, as though someone had dipped a feather in ink and dragged it just once across the paper's back. Not a flourish, not an accident. A signature or a warning. You tuck it into your journal and pull out the old mosaic tile fragment you once found while sweeping the courtyard. You've kept it hidden. On it, a painted phoenix in a cage half-burnt, but smiling. You run your thumb across it, suddenly aware that everything in this house speaks if you know how to listen. Tiles, birds, servants, pomegranates, even silence. You look up. Garib is gone again, but not far. You hum once. And from the kitchen window he watches. Not like them. Then silence. You don't move. Don't breathe. Only one thought rises, now sharp and clear. You're not the only one being watched. You leave the window half open, pretending to be careless. A cup of tea cools untouched beside you as you sit in the receiving room, fingers playing absent-mindedly with the fringe of a woven cushion. You're waiting. Not for Garib, she's already returned and vanished twice this morning, trailing behind her the softest scent of wind and saffron. No, you're waiting for the new servant, the one who smells wrong, the one your bird does not like. Your husband is still away, or so the steward claims. Somewhere between Mosul and the Gulf, buying silk and pretending to be essential. But trade never stopped the house from moving. There are deliveries to oversee repairs, to approve endless rhythms to uphold. And into all of that he arrived. Quietly. Like an extra shadow. You catch the sound of his voice near the far garden. Not speaking, just humming. Low steady. A tune that doesn't belong to this household. Not Persian, not even Arabic. Something northern. Slavic, maybe. Too steady for a servant. Too deliberate for a man trained to vanish. Historians still argue whether spies were used regularly in merchant households or whether it's just the stuff of Persian fables and frustrated wives. But who else watches the layout of your rooms, the habits of your feet, the way you close the cage each night you call for the steward? He arrives eyes low, sweat already clinging to his hairline, though the sun is barely climbing. You ask him plainly, who was it that sent the boy? The steward stammers, says your husband mentioned an exchange, says he doesn't know more. His hands fidget with the hem of his robe. You fix him with a stare you learned from your mother. Would you trust him to guard your daughters? His mouth opens, closes. He bows low and walks away without answering. You sit back and hum. Almost instantly, Gharib chirps from the lattice above your shoulder, hidden but close. New man. Smells wrong, she repeats. Where does he sleep, you ask her softly. The answer isn't words. It's a flutter and the scratch of claws against tile as she darts out toward the eastern quarters. You follow, through the bathhouse hallway unused this season because the pipes leak, and into the chamber that was once your brother-in-law's before he married and vanished to the mountains. It's now storage, or was. Inside, neat. Clean. Too clean. A cot? Yes. A basin of water. But no clutter, no idle objects, no trace of someone living. Only waiting. You crouch and run your fingers under the cot. There's a slip of paper, folded 4 times. No name. Just a sketch. A woman veiled. A bird perched on her shoulder. Below it, a date this week. You stand slowly. Quirky tidbit. In certain circles, coded sketches were used instead of written orders. Safer for couriers who couldn't read. Easier to burn without suspicion. Easier to pass as art. You press the paper into your sleeve and return to your room. There on the windowsill, a fresh feather. Not from Gharib. Different shape. Duller. But it wasn't there before. It's bait. Someone's testing you. That night, you don't sleep in your bed. You pretend to. You even let the oil lamp burn low and scatter fresh rose petals beside the cage as if to celebrate her return. Then you slip quietly into the storeroom, curl beneath the tapestry, and wait with your breath tucked deep into your lungs. Hours pass. Then the softest creak. The latch of your door slow and cautious. Not the wind. You press your hand to your chest, feel the thrum of your heartbeat as clearly as the blood in your ears. A footstep. Then another. Then the sound of the cage door. Not opening. Closing. Too fast. A pause. Then retreating steps. You wait 5 more minutes. Then 10. Then you emerge silent. In your chamber, everything is as you left it except the cage. The perch inside has been moved. A feather left deliberately on the bedding. But this one is Gharib's. You scan the corners, the shadows, and then from behind the curtain, smells wrong. Not alone, you spin. She's perched on the curtain rod, head low, wings twitching. Not alone, you whisper, but she doesn't repeat it. She just hops down to your shoulder and breathes once against your cheek. You exhale slowly. This game has changed. Now you're both the watcher and the watched. And you are not alone. By morning, the feather on your bedding is gone. Not taken by you. Not taken by Gharib. Just gone. As though it had been made of fog or memory or some invisible thread unraveling behind you in the night. You stare at the place where it lay your blankets undisturbed, but your thoughts frayed at every edge. The servant never appears for morning duties. You don't ask. Asking would tip your hand. Instead, you slip into your day like a veil measured, graceful, silent. You supervise the household accounts, correct the kitchen boy's market list, and rearrange the spice jars in the back pantry so the anise stops falling over the cloves. But your ears are tilted toward the spaces between things. The empty doorway, the still hallway, the silence inside the echo. Garib doesn't speak today. Not a word, not a note. She flits once through the garden at midday, then vanishes, leaving a single seed on the rim of the well. A melon seed. You haven't had melon in 3 days, and you didn't see anyone in the courtyard. That evening, the calligrapher's wife sends a parcel, unmarked. Inside is a scrap of parchment bearing only 2 words. North room? You know the one? The old guest room near the front gate. Never used. Too drafty. Still smells faintly of poppy oil and seawater, no one knows why. You take the message and fold it into your sleeve. Later, when the sun slips behind the rooftop domes and the house stretches into that lazy hush before dinner, you slip away. You take no lamp, just your hands to guide you along the familiar walls, counting doorways with your fingers. The north room has not changed. The bed still sags in the center. The chest of drawers leans slightly to the right, but the window is open, and beneath it a scroll, tied with green ribbon sealed in wax that bears no crest. You close the door, unroll it. Inside, a list, 3 names, none of them yours. One, though, you recognize. A girl from the hammam who vanished last year. Said to have eloped. Said to have drowned. Said to have left behind a bird who refused to sing afterward. You remember that. You sat in the bath the day the news spread your hair, floating like seaweed, your bird back home waiting. One of the women had whispered. She taught it too well. It knew more than she did. Historians still argue whether the practice of echo-scribing was real, where women trained birds to carry sensitive knowledge from house to house, delivering secrets disguised as song. Some say it's myth. Others believe the entire merchant network was built on birdsong. You believe now. You roll the scroll again and press it against your chest. Garib has gone quiet for a reason. You turn back toward the courtyard, and that's when you see him. The servant. Standing just inside the far archway, perfectly still, eyes locked on yours. Not startled, not curious, just waiting. You don't speak. You hold his gaze a moment longer than is polite, long enough to let him see you are not afraid, even if your pulse beats like a trapped moth. Then you walk past him. Slowly. Deliberately. And as you pass, you whisper just loud enough she listens when I hum. His shoulder twitches. That night, you sleep with the window open again, but the cage closed. Not locked. Just resting, and somewhere before sleep claims you, Garib returns to your pillow. She doesn't speak. She just settles near your ear feathers against your cheek like old silk. You dream of the scroll again, but this time it unrolls into a tapestry. Not names, faces, and every one of them is watching you. You wake with a gasp hand outstretched as if still touching the tapestry from your dream. The sunlight slants through the mashrabia in thin blades, carving the floor into gold-laced shadows. Garib is gone from your pillow, but a single downy feather rests against your neck like a signature. You rise slowly. The scroll, real not dreamt, still lies folded beneath your pillow. You unfurl it again. 3 names. 1 crossed out. 1 underlined. 1 circled faintly as if someone changed their mind halfway through. The circled one belongs to the girl from the hammam. The vanished one. The one with the silent bird. You wonder now, was she ever meant to disappear, or did she just sing the wrong song to the wrong ears? You dress in layers? Not rich ones, nothing too fine. Just the robe with the hidden hem where you once stitched a feather into the lining, and the scarf with faded embroidery from your mother's dowry. Pieces that say you are modest, predictable, harmless. You leave the scroll where it is. Let them find it if they're searching. Today you are going to the hammam. You rarely visit now. Not since Garib arrived. Not since the gossip turned from perfume and lovers to things far more unsettling, missing girls' animals that didn't return whispers of a woman who taught her bird to confess. They don't say your name, but you've heard the shape of it in their caution. The hammam itself is unchanged. The same steam rising in lazy columns from the marble floor, the same cracked basin in the corner that never quite drains. You greet the women with soft nods, slide into the rhythm of robes and slippers and polite murmurs. But one woman watches you too long. Older, with ink-stained fingers and hair braided so tightly it glints like black ribbon. You sit near her in the warm room where steam curls secrets into your skin. She speaks first. They say your bird has returned. You don't flinch. She missed her mirror. She missed your words, the woman says. Words carry weight, even in feathers. Historians still argue whether the women of Isfahan's bathhouses exchanged more than beauty secrets in those domed chambers. Whether the walls ever truly forgot what they heard. Some claim entire networks of resistance were born in steam and scent. You believe it now. The woman leans close. Yours isn't the first bird that's watched too closely. You glance at her. What did yours see? A pause. Enough to get her stolen. Twice. You blink. Did you get her back once? You don't ask about the second time. Instead, you offer a single word. North. She nods. He was looking for you. Who sent him? She shrugs. Someone who doesn't like the sound of women remembering themselves. The steam thickens. Shapes blur. Before you can ask another question, she rises and vanishes into the swirling white. You're left alone in the chamber, the marble floor slick beneath you, your breath now sharp against your ribs. You wash in silence, letting the heat loosen your limbs, your thoughts, your fear. When you return home, the courtyard is quiet. The servant is gone, not dismissed, just not there. The steward shrugs, claims ignorance. The other staff shuffle their eyes and busy their hands. Only Garib seems unconcerned. She perches on the upper railing of the courtyard gallery, preening one foot wrapped around the carved pillar like a queen surveying her domain. You sit on the bench beneath her and open your palm. She flutters down lands gently and places something into it. Not a feather. A thread of silk. Green. You trace it with your thumb, then look up. On the opposite balcony, another bird. Not Garib. Sleeker. Gray with black-tipped wings. Watching you with an intensity that curls your fingers. Garib chirps once and flies away. The other bird stays. Then with no warning it sings. Just a few notes, but they are yours. Your lullaby. Not echoed. Stolen. And that is when you understand. Your bird didn't just escape. She was followed. You remained frozen on the bench, the green silk thread still curled in your palm like a lifeline or a leash. Across the courtyard, the strange bird doesn't blink. It watches you with that flat, clinical attention of creatures that never truly belong to themselves. Then it hops once to the side and takes flight. Not in panic, not in fear. As though its part is done. You watch it vanish into the gaps between rooftops, wondering if it flew off to another cage or to another ear. Garib lands on your shoulder, not a breath later, silent as ever. She does not sing. doesn't mimic the stolen tune. Her claws are gentle against your collarbone. She listens, you murmur to her. She remembers Garib replies so softly it might be your own breath. The rest of the day unfolds with unusual stillness. The steward is too quiet. The kitchen boy spills lentils twice. Even the old nursemaid forgets to refill the jasmine water near your mirror. A heaviness blankets the house, not dread exactly. More like the pause between thunder and rain. By late afternoon, the calligrapher's wife returns. You don't summon her. She simply appears in the garden with an armful of dried herbs and a look that says she knows too much again. I saw a bird, you say, before she speaks. She nods. Gray-black, tips you nod. She sets down the herbs. That one sings only what it's told. It doesn't choose. You glance upward. Who teaches it? She hesitates. Someone who collects voices. Historians still argue whether certain guilds in medieval Persia had private spies embedded in trade families, posing as servant scribes or even entertainers. What's rarely debated is that birds were often part of the bargain. You look at her. Do they know she's back? They do now. You clench your fingers around the silk thread. What happens next? She meets your eyes with grim softness. That depends on what she says next. You look to Garib. She flutters up to the edge of the basin, dipping her beak in the rosewater and shaking droplets in an arc that glitters in the sun. You reach for your journal that evening, not your regular one, the old one, the one with smoothed corners and faded ink, the one you started before the marriage, before the cage, before the games began. You open it to the page with the tapestry sketch, the one that came to you in the dream. There are faces. Now you begin to name them. The girl from the hammam, the calligrapher's wife, your nursemaid younger, sharper, yourself, and at the center, Garib. Not drawn as a bird, but as something between woman and wind, perched atop a tower woven of silk and whispers. You add another face now. The servant. You don't have a name, but you sketch the tilt of his brow, the arch of his hand, the way his shadow fell long across the mosaic. You shade it with ink dusted from the edge of the old reed scroll as though truth can be smudged into shape. Quirky tidbit. In certain secret schools, women were taught to encode letters using bird shapes, each curve of a wing, each tilt of a beak corresponding to a vowel or number. Some messages took weeks to decipher, others years. A few were never meant to be solved at all. You wonder which kind yours will be. That night, Garib sings again. Not loudly, not in mimicry. She sings a song you've never heard before. A melody with no words. Just longing stretched into sound. You close your eyes and listen, imagining it floating out the lattice into the city across the rooftops toward ears you'll never meet. Then she stops. Just one word this time. Tomorrow. You look at her. What happens tomorrow? But she's already asleep. Feathers fluffed head tucked beneath her wing. And outside something rustles the jasmine vines. The jasmine vines sway gently though the air is still. You remain motionless at the window. Garib sleeping nearby your breath, shallow your fingers wrapped around the edge of the sill as if bracing for an answer that refuses to arrive. Tomorrow. She said tomorrow. Not soon. Not later. A word with weight. A word with teeth. The night deepens, yet you do not sleep. You move through your home like a ghost trained to step only on the quiet tiles. Past the old nursery door. Past the room where your husband's ledgers sleep in dust. Into the garden moonlit and silver with dew. You light no lamps. Even the moon seems too loud. In the center of the courtyard, you crouch beside the pomegranate tree. Its bark feels dry, almost brittle, but the leaves are still sharp with scent. You dig lightly at the base, your fingers pressing into soil, already marked with hidden roots and broken promises. You unearth the object wrapped in cloth, your bundle of feathers. Ghareebs, 23 in total, collected over seasons, folded carefully between fabric and time. But only one is different. It's not hers. Darker, coarser, still damp. You found it under your pillow 2 nights ago. Not where she sleeps, not where she sings, but where he had stood, the servant. You wrap the feathers again tighter this time. The bundle feels heavier than it should. You return to the storeroom. Ghareeb is awake now, waiting on the beam above your tapestry. She watches you with unblinking eyes. You don't speak. You lay the bundle before her, unwrap it, and place the single strange feather on top. She steps down, sniffs, then softly, wrong. You sit, cross-legged, steady. Tell me. She says nothing. Then in a voice not quite yours, not quite hers, she whispers. Not his feather. You blink. Then who she tilts her head. Clicks once. Girl, gone. Your mind races. The Hammam girl. But she vanished long ago. Unless someone took her voice too. Unless that's what they do. Harvest birds, harvest songs, harvest you. Historians still argue whether the practice of using birds to preserve women's voices began in spiritual ritual or espionage. Some say it was the only way for certain women to leave behind a trace of themselves in societies that would erase them. You touch the strange feather, cold. Then Ghareeb sings a note so low, so uncharacteristically mournful that it chills your marrow. A sound like wind through bone. Then silence again. You wake before dawn, unsure whether you ever truly slept. The household remains quiet. No pots clanging, no footsteps, not even the steward coughing in the pantry. You go to the kitchen and find the door unlatched. Unusual. The courtyard fountain still burbles, but something feels wrong. You step carefully as though the flagstones might shatter beneath you. At the far edge beneath the window is a stain. Faint, but fresh. Saffron-colored, with darker threads trailing away like spilled ink. You kneel. Touch it. Smells like crushed fig skin and iron. You follow it around the mosaic path through the side corridor toward the north room. The door is ajar. Inside empty. Bed untouched. Chest open. Scroll gone. The parchment, the one with the 3 names, is no longer beneath your pillow either. You retreat. Slowly. Not out of fear, out of caution. Because now you understand this house is no longer just your home. It is a theater, a snare, a page. You're being rewritten. You find the calligrapher's wife later near the bathhouse. She says nothing, just hands you a packet. Inside ink, not black, not red. Gold and a reed pen. Quirky tidbit. It's said that the most sacred contracts in ancient courts were signed in gold ink. Not because it lasted, but because it didn't. It flaked, disappeared. And only those who remembered the exact wording could prove it had ever existed. You tuck the packet into your robe. You'll write your own ending now. And you won't need anyone's permission. Ghareeb chirps twice as you return home. From the shadows above your door, she whispers, "Tomorrow comes." And you, with a smile as thin as thread, reply, "I'm ready." You begin your morning the same way you always have, with a cup of hot water steeped in mint leaves and crushed cardamom pods, but today you don't drink it. You let the steam rise slowly into your face as you sit in the sunlit gallery. Ghareeb perches near your elbow, unusually still. No songs, no mimicry, just breath. A quiet vigil. You glance toward the far end of the courtyard where the pomegranate tree casts sharp-edged shadows on the stones. The stain beneath the window is still there, faint but real. The scroll is gone. The feather not hers. The message clear. You're being warned or invited. Historians still argue whether women in merchant households played passive roles in the webs of trade and communication, or were in fact the hidden architects of information networks. But you've seen enough now to know silence is not absence, and presence is not always power. You rise, robe trailing behind you like the edge of an ink stroke, and walk toward the chamber where your husband stores his ledgers. You haven't entered this room in months, not because it was forbidden, but because it was too boring to be suspicious. But now boring seems like the perfect disguise. Inside, rows of scrolls, baskets of dried ink cakes, a sealed chest bearing the insignia of the Gulf route, a copper dolphin swallowing its tail. You unlock it easily. He never suspected you'd remember where he hid the key. Inside records, shipments, contracts. Nothing unusual. Until the bottom layer. Letters, personal. Some addressed to him in the looping script of women. Some unsigned. Some with drawings. And one with a feather tucked inside. You pull it out. The feather is green. Yours? You open the letter. Not words. Marks. Bird-shaped symbols. A strange cipher, but familiar. You rush to the storeroom and unroll the book the calligrapher's wife gave you weeks ago. You flip past the drawings, the songs, the notes on training, until you find it the key to the bird code. Each curve, each dot, each angle corresponds to sound. You match them. Line by line. Until the message forms, she sings what we silence. You feel a chill settle behind your ribs. They knew. All along. Your husband. The servant. Whoever he worked for. They knew Garib wasn't just a pet. She was your tongue in flight. And that terrified them. Because she remembered. And because she chose you. You take the letter. Fold it once. Then burn it over the oil lamp. Let them see smoke if they're watching. Let them know you're not afraid to destroy a piece of the story they wrote. Garib flies in from the hallway, landing on the mosaic at your feet. She drops something. A seed. Pomegranate. But not just a seed wrapped in a scrap of linen like a message. You open it. 3 new symbols. Translated gate, moon. Soon. You glance at her. Tonight she blinks slowly, then says, "She's ready. Not I'm, not you're. She's the girl from the hammam. The one who vanished, or someone else entirely. Quirky tidbit. There's a legend from the outskirts of Shiraz about a woman who disappeared on her wedding night, leaving behind only a caged bird and a trail of seeds. They say she lived in the hills collecting songs from the wind, teaching them to birds who delivered them across cities fragmented but true. No one ever found her. But sometimes women swore they heard their own secrets sung back to them in unfamiliar voices. That evening, you don't change into your finest robes. You dress simply like a woman going to market. You braid your hair in the old-style 3 plaits down the back tied with green silk. The silk Garib brought you. You light 1 lamp, leave the rest dark, and you sit in the gallery, waiting, listening. Then from the gate, 3 knocks, then silence. You rise. Garib follows, wings fluttering just once. You open the gate. The alley beyond is empty, but the moon is high, and a trail of feathers leads away. You do not hesitate. You step into the night, and Garib flies ahead. The alley behind your home is quiet, too quiet. Even the dogs are silent tonight, as if the city is holding its breath listening. The moon bathes the narrow passage in cold light enough to show the way without exposing you. You keep close to the wall's slippered feet, barely brushing the ground. Ahead, the feathers continue spaced apart like a secret rhythm green-violet-gray. Some curl gently in a breeze. Others lie perfectly still. Garib perches on a wooden post near a shuttered window, her feathers bristling with purpose. She doesn't sing. She just waits, head tilted like a guide who cannot follow too far. You press your hand against your chest, steadying your heartbeat. Then you step past her deeper into the maze of quiet streets that weave the bones of Isfahan. You don't ask where you're going, you already know. Historians still argue whether the women's bathhouses, market stalls, and even rooftop gardens doubled as covert meeting grounds. Whispers tell of women exchanging messages through patterns and embroidery or through songs only birds could carry. You used to think those were just bedtime stories. Now they feel like instructions. The feathers lead you to a door you've never noticed before. Or perhaps you were never meant to notice it. Set into a stone wall surrounded by the backs of shuttered shops, the door is wooden and faded. On its surface, a single symbol drawn in chalk. A bird in flight. You hesitate only once, then knock. Once, twice. Pause. A creak. The door opens. Inside a room lit only by oil lamps hanging low from iron hooks. The scent of old books, ink, and rose ash fills the air. On the far wall, scrolls. Hundreds. Lined in shelves too high to reach without a ladder. And around the room, women. 5 of them. Each turns toward you in silence. None of them are surprised. The youngest speaks first. She said you'd come. You say nothing. Garib flutters to your shoulder. An older woman nods. We've been listening to her for weeks. She sang of the feather you found, adds another sorting herbs into paper packets. She sang of your silence, the first girl says. And of what it cost you. They guide you to the center of the room. A cushion waits. Beside it, a scroll already unfurled. You glance down. It holds your name. Your birth name, not the married name, not the one you used to sign delivery ledgers or festival scrolls. The one you whispered to Garib in the early days beneath a sleeping sky. And a second line. She remembers everything you were taught to forget. You kneel. Garib hops down onto the parchment and pecks once at the second line. You meet the gaze of the elder woman. Is she yours? You ask softly. She's all of ours, she replies. And she's never been anyone's. They begin to speak not in riddles, not in ceremony. Just truths. Quiet ones, painful ones. Stories of birds lost, of songs erased, of girls who disappeared not because they were taken, but because they had nowhere left to speak. Quirky tidbit. There is a myth from the southern coast of Persia that tells of the Sazan-i-Par or feather scribes birds who served as the final archive of a woman's heart. They were believed to take flight when their keeper died carrying one last song that only the wind could translate. You don't believe it's myth anymore. The night stretches. Words become thread. Thread becomes fabric. Fabric becomes belonging. One woman hands you a scroll to copy. It's a song. Not yours. Yet somehow it fits. You begin to write your hand steady even as your heart quivers. When you finish, the youngest girl brings a small bowl rose water and saffron ink. She holds your hand. Your voice, she says, belongs to you again. You dip the reed pen and sign. With your true name. With Garib watching. With the women around you humming the tune you once thought belonged to no one else. The door remains open behind you. You'll leave before dawn, but not unchanged. Never that. You leave just before the call to prayer. The air has shifted lighter, thinner, but tinged with something harder to name. Like standing in the moment between lightning and thunder. The women don't stop you. No goodbyes, no farewells. Only a knowing glance from the eldest as she closes the scroll you signed and places it into a drawer with dozens like it. You don't know if they'll call on you again. You don't know if you want them to. Garib circles overhead once before returning to your shoulder, her wings damp with fog. She presses her beak to your earlobe and exhales. Yes, exhales like a sigh shaped from memory. She doesn't sing, doesn't mimic. She simply stays. You walk the alleyway back to your home following your own fading footprints from the night before. They look different now, as though someone else left them. The city wakes gently around you, lamplighters dousing their flames, sleepy merchants sweeping thresholds, a widow scattering millet on her step for morning birds. None of them see you, or if they do, they pretend not to. Historians still argue whether there existed a secret network of women, known only by the birds they kept whispering secrets from rooftop to rooftop, hiding truth in lullabies and warnings in mimicry. The scholarly world lacks proof, but the streets say otherwise. You reach your gate and pause before entering. The silence feels alert now, not empty, not hostile, just watching. You open the door. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. You bathe slowly, deliberately as the sun begins to rise. You grind your own saffron into the oil, letting the golden threads stain your palms before scrubbing them clean. Your robe clings like a second skin as you wrap it around yourself, damp and fragrant. At the breakfast table, you eat alone. Dates, honey, bread still warm. The kitchen boy eyes you curiously. He doesn't speak. No one does. You thank him aloud just to remind yourself you can still use your voice for simple things. Later, you return to the birdcage. It sits empty, sunlit, waiting. You open the door, not for her. She has no use for cages anymore. You open it for yourself. For the version of you still learning how to move freely through her own home. You leave the cage by the window, its brass shining. You drape a green silk ribbon from the perch one Garib brought from the alley and step back. She flutters over, inspects it, clicks her beak once in approval. Then she says with total clarity, "They'll come tonight." You meet her gaze. Who she ruffles her feathers? Others? Watchers? Quiet ones. You feel no fear. Instead, you move to the storeroom and retrieve the gold ink. The ink meant for vanishing. You sit cross-legged and begin to write. Not a message, not a confession, a record, a memory the wind cannot erase. You start with your mother's lullaby, then your own, then the first time Garib mimicked your name. Each word glows as it dries, then slowly dulls to nothing. But it remains, etched into the parchment like breath into glass. Quirky tidbit. In some families, women would write prayers on strips of cloth in disappearing ink, then sew them into pillows or robe linings. The idea was that words spoken to the body would guard it more fully than anything spoken aloud. A talisman of memory stitched in secret. You stitch your scroll into the hem of your robe. You take the old scrolls, the ones your husband never read, and stack them beneath your writing desk. Then calmly, you set them alight. The fire takes fast. Rose petals crackle between pages. Garib whistles softly as the flames curl upward. When the steward bursts in, it's already too late to stop it. He looks at you with horror. "What have you done, you smile?" "I've remembered." He steps back, and from the rooftop, other birds begin to sing. Not yours, not his. Others. Everywhere. Voices rising like a tide. A song only some can hear. You walk past him, robe heavy with memory, steps light with purpose. Garib lands on your shoulder and whispers, "It's begun." Smoke still coils in the rafters long after the fire has quieted. The scrolls are gone. Ink turned to ash. Ledgers scorched into silence. The scent of burnt parchment lingers, blending with rose and saffron, a perfume of defiance. You sit calmly in the gallery, a cup of cool tea in your hands. The household teeters between alarm and hesitation. The steward has vanished off to find anyone who might still believe this is his house. But they won't come. Not fast enough, and not for him. Garib watches from the open birdcage, the door swinging gently. She doesn't enter. She never will again. But she sits near it as though standing guard. Her silence is more eloquent than any song. Then, as if summoned, the calligrapher's wife arrives. She enters without knocking, barefoot, as if she has always lived here. Behind her trail 2 other strangers to you, but not to Garib. The bird flutters once, then settles. Recognition. One woman carries a satchel of tools. Reed pens, ink cakes, folded cloth stained with golden fingerprints. The other holds only a small clay bowl covered with a black silk cloth. They join you in the gallery, saying nothing at first. Just the sound of birdsong from outside, dozens now. Maybe more. You nod. They're here. They've been waiting. The calligrapher's wife replies, pulling up her sleeves. The woman with the bowl places it between you all. She removes the silk cover. Inside, feathers. Not loose. Braided. 12 braids bound with threads of every color. Some have bits of ribbon woven in. One has tiny bells. These were the first, she says softly. From women who never made it past warning. You swallow. Do I add mine? Not yet, says the one with the tools. First, you must record. They unroll a long strip of cloth linen, frayed at the edges, but smooth in the center. You recognize the script stitched into the border. Bird code. Not the one in your book. Older, sharper, and blank in the middle. Waiting for you. Quirky tidbit. In the outer provinces, some women stitched entire memoirs into the linings of funeral shrouds, hoping the dead would carry their truths beyond this world. The threads were dyed with herbs that faded over time, secrets only visible when pressed under steam or firelight. You reach for the needle. You do not write. You sew. Each stitch a word, each loop a sentence. The fire, the scroll, the message in the feather, the voice in the bathhouse, the servant's silence. Your silence. Garib's song. The linen grows heavy with meaning, and still the house stays quiet. No one interrupts. Even the city seems to hush around you like it knows something is ending or beginning. Outside, the birds sing louder. You move to the open gallery and look up. They're everywhere now. On the rooftops, on the windowsills, on the mosaic dome of the bathhouse across the alley. A parliament of feathers, watching, listening. And then she steps into the courtyard. The girl from the hammam. No longer a girl. Older, taller, dressed simply. But her eyes. You know her. Even Garib gives a low, throaty sound of recognition. She walks with no urgency, just presence. I had to leave, she says, so they could believe the story ended. But it didn't. No. Her gaze rests on the linen in your lap. You've written the next part. The calligrapher's wife smiles. And now we all remember it. Historians still argue whether any real network of women ever existed in Isfahan. If these hidden stitchers of memory, these feather scribes, these echoers in silk were fact or legend, they'll never find proof. Because it doesn't live on paper. It lives in you. The girl from the hammam sits beside you. They'll come again. For someone else. Another cage. You nod. But they'll find the latch already open, you say. She smiles. Exactly. Garib hops onto the linen, her claws dancing gently across your stitches. Then she sings again. Your voice, your words, no longer trapped in her throat. but echoing freely into the sky. That evening, you sit beneath the pomegranate tree as dusk spills like ink across the sky, the courtyard steeped in a hush so complete it hums. Garib perches nearby, half dozing, one eye open, just in case. The linen strip now rests folded in your lap. Your stitches are not neat. Not as elegant as the calligrapher's wife, nor as intricate as the girl from the hammam. But they are yours. Uneven. Bold. True. You run your fingers along the cloth, feeling the ridges of thread like a blind woman reading memory by touch. In the corner of the courtyard, the cage remains open, untouched. The green ribbon still tied to its perch like a silent laugh. No one dares ask about the fire. The steward returned earlier with a half-hearted attempt at discipline and left again carrying excuses heavier than scrolls. You suspect he won't return. Good. You are no longer the quiet wife in silk robes. You are the one who sews with gold thread, who remembers, who releases what others try to hold captive. Tonight others will come. Not enemies, not friends, watchers, wanderers. Those who heard Garib's song echo from rooftop to rooftop, carried by wind and stone and rumor. Women who know what it means to have your voice stolen and returned in feathers. You prepare the house differently this time. No lanterns, only candlelight. No elaborate meal. Just dates, sugared almonds, dried figs steeped in cardamom. No guards, no locked doors. Only open ones. Garib helps in her own way, dropping bits of green thread near the entrance, pecking lightly at the floor tiles as if approving the quiet. Quirky tidbit. In some villages, it was tradition to mark a safe house with birdseed arranged in patterns along the threshold circles for welcome triangles for warning. You never knew if the birds could read them, but the women always could. You choose a circle, not perfect, but whole. As the moon lifts above the domes of Isfahan, they begin to arrive, one by one. Soft footsteps, faint knocks, sometimes only the flutter of wings. You greet each woman with nothing more than a nod. No names are exchanged. Names are for those who want to be remembered by others. These women want to remember themselves. They bring small offering strips of cloth feathers tied in ribbon, folded notes written in cipher. One brings an old mirror cracked, etched with song letters along the rim. Another offers a pouch of dried rose petals, each with a single syllable pressed into its flesh. You lead them to the storeroom. It glows now not from fire, but from intention. The shelf holds the stitched linen, the ink pots, the silent scrolls of women who stitched truth into margins. No need for ledgers anymore here. Memory lives on breath and cloth. One woman hums while she writes. The tune is unfamiliar, but your heart picks it up like it's always known the key. Garib listens head tilted, and then begins to harmonize. A duet of memory. You sit beside the girl from the hammam, helping her add new symbols to the old map, carved into a slat of polished wood. She gestures to a new mark, a star etched above a tiny dome. Another house, she says. They opened their cage yesterday. You smile, and add one more beside it. Your house. This house. It's open now, not just in doorways or windows, but in spirit. No more watchers from behind lattice. No more swallowing your words like pomegranate seeds meant only disdain. From the courtyard, a song rises, not Garib's, a woman's, low, short, followed by another, and another. Not loud, not brazen, but unmistakable. A wave of echo, soft, gold-threaded, and unstoppable. Historians still argue whether the voices of women were ever truly heard in their time. You won't argue, you'll answer, with a song that begins like breath and ends in flight. By morning, the women are gone. They slip out like threads pulled softly from a loom, silent, unseen, each carrying something stitched from the night. Some leave by the gate, some through the back alley, and one climbs silently to the rooftop and vanishes into the fog above Isfahan. But the house remembers them. Their footprints remain faintly in the courtyard dust. Their songs linger in the lattice tangled among the jasmine vines. And the stitched linen, now heavier than ever, rests folded beneath your pillow, a soft, secret archive of truth no fire will take. You rise with the dawn and find Garib already awake, wings flared, preening with deliberate calm. She glances at you once, then speaks. Watch the roof. You do. There, silhouetted against the first blush of light, the gray bird, the one who sang your lullaby. It stands still for a moment, then takes flight, not away, but in a wide arc over the courtyard, circling once, twice, then vanishes. Historians still argue whether birds used in information exchange could recognize more than just words if they understood intent, if they could choose loyalty. Today you believe they can, because in that flight there was no menace, only release. You step out into the sun-warmed courtyard. The cage is empty, still open, and now dusted in pollen from the overhead vine. You smile faintly. It has become less of a symbol now. Less of a prison, more of a relic. You leave it. A monument to a story already outgrown. Garib flutters to your shoulder. She's lighter today, as if she's shed something invisible. Together you move to the storeroom. You unroll the tapestry one more time. The faces stitched into its breadth feel more alive now. Your hand lingers over the girl from the hammam. You trace the lines around her eyes, the thread that formed her half-smile, and then you stitch one more. Yours. This time without the veil. No longer just a listener or even a keeper, but a voice. Quirky tidbit. In some isolated oases, women embroidered their likenesses into communal tapestries, not as vanity, but as a record of resilience. If one was taken, her stitched self remained. The community could point and say she was real. She mattered. We remember. You step back from the tapestry and press your palm to your chest. You matter. You always did. No one had to write it down, but now it's written all the same. Later that day, a letter arrives, not from your husband. From his partner in Samarkand. It's short, blunt. Shipment delayed. Partner arrested. Claims false wife implicated. You read it twice, then tear it in half. You light no fire. You burn nothing. You simply let it fall. Outside a knock. The kitchen boy wide-eyed hands you a small bundle. Inside a single gray feather. And a piece of fig bread. Not a message, a sign. You look up. Across the street on the neighboring rooftop, a girl watches you. Maybe 12, maybe 14. Too young to carry a story. And yet her scarf bears a symbol stitched in green. A bird in flight. She nods once. You nod back. It's already begun. That evening you teach Garib a new song. It isn't a lullaby, it's a beginning. It's awkward, half-formed, uneven. She struggles at first, but by sunset she sings it back clear, strong, and low. And as the first stars blink through the veil of dusk, you climb to the rooftop alone. Garib circles once above you, and lands beside the lantern you leave lit not for light, but for direction. A beacon for others, for those who have not yet spoken, but will. The lantern glows like a promise against the soft indigo sky. It flickers in rhythm with your breath, and for a long while you simply sit beside it on the rooftop legs tucked beneath you. Garib curled in the crook of your shoulder. The air tastes of cardamom, distant rain, and anticipation. The city hums below, unaware of what you've woven. Or perhaps not unaware. Just pretending. That's what cities do. They pretend not to hear what women whisper behind closed doors or what birds repeat when no one is listening. But tonight you know better. You're not just whispering, you're writing. Below you the house has quieted completely. The servants tread lightly now, not out of fear, but out of deference. Something has shifted, and though they don't speak of it, they feel it in the stillness, in the unburned scrolls, in the open cage. Garib clicks her beak once sharply and shifts her weight. You follow her gaze. Across the alley on another rooftop a woman stands, young, barefoot, a scarf tied around her head with a single gold thread running through the edge. She doesn't wave. She doesn't smile. She just begins to sing, not loudly, just enough. A melody unfamiliar but aching with recognition. You close your eyes and let the sound wash over you slow and steady. It threads through the night like embroidery stitching rooftops together. Then from farther down the street another voice joins in. Higher, lighter. Then another, and another. Until the alley becomes a chamber of harmony. No names, no faces, just notes shared, folded, carried on the backs of feathered things. Historians still argue whether this kind of transmission was real, whether women actually passed songs this way from rooftop to rooftop, disguising messages in rhythm and cadence. But you don't care. You know what's real. This moment, this network, this quiet rising of voices long pressed flat by silence. Quirky tidbit. In some northern cities, when a woman died without family, neighbors would sing at her door at dusk, a call and response mourning known as Sayeg e Parandagan. Shadow of the birds, no funeral, just music. They believed the birds would carry her memory upward. Tonight doesn't feel like mourning, it feels like return, like reclamation. You rise and hum a line of your own, letting it slide between verses, tangle itself into the melody, become part of something larger. Garib lifts her wings once twice and takes off. Not in escape, not in warning, but in joy. She loops above you, then glides rooftop to rooftop, pausing beside each singing voice, nodding as if she remembers them all. Perhaps she does. You descend before the third prayer, call your feet bare against the cool stone. Inside you unroll your tapestry again. There are more faces to add now. Not from memory, from witness. You stitch the young girl from the rooftop, the woman from the bathhouse, the steward's wife, yes, her too, who had once whispered a warning about keeping birds indoors too long. One by one you pull thread through cloth, and with each stitch the story gets louder. Not in volume, in truth. You pause only when you feel her return, Garib, landing softly beside your needle, a single olive leaf in her beak. She drops it into your palm. You raise an eyebrow. She chirps peace, then rests her head beneath her wing. You place the olive leaf at the corner of the tapestry. Not stitched in, just placed. Because some piece is fragile and must be offered, not sewn. You fall asleep beside the tapestry that night, no pillow, no blanket. Only the weight of history pressing gently against your side. And for the first time in years, you dream not of silence, but of wings. You awaken with the first sunbeam slipping across your cheek. The linen tapestry crumpled slightly beneath your side. Garib is still beside you. Feathers fluffed in the golden light, breathing softly in her sleep. She doesn't wake until you sit up, stretch, and let out a long sigh that belongs more to someone beginning than ending. You press your palm gently to the tapestry. The threads are cool now, but they hold warmth. Memory lingers in fiber. You smooth the cloth, carefully folding it with reverence before placing it into the lacquered chest beneath your writing table. Not hidden, protected. From your window, the city looks unchanged. Merchants unfurl their awnings. A neighbor calls out to his donkey with theatrical despair. Somewhere a distant pan clangs against stone. The usual ordinary rituals of people pretending not to live near miracles. You dress simply linen robe, no jewelry, just a soft sash around your waist. Today is not for decoration. Today is for visiting. You wind your way through the quiet early streets, taking a different route than usual. Garib flits ahead of you, pausing on awnings and market stalls, her presence subtle but impossible to ignore for those who've been listening. You pass a corner where two girls are chalking patterns onto the wall. One of them hums a melody you recognize, not a song you taught Garib, but one she carried. One she must have given away in the night. The girl sees you, smiles, and keeps humming. You nod once and keep walking. You arrive at the hammam just as it opens. The matron greets you with a slight incline of her head. Not a bow, not formality, recognition. You remove your shoes and step inside. Steam curls from the floor like memory taking shape. The stone beneath your feet is still cool but will warm soon. The women inside part slightly as you enter like reeds making space for the river. You sit by the central basin and watch the water lap, gently at its edges. The girl from the rooftop is there. She sits across from you, head bowed, braiding her own hair into a rope. Did she come to you, you ask quietly? She sang all night, the girl replies. You nod. She left a feather, she adds, and a name I'd forgotten was mine. You smile. She does that. Historians still argue whether public bathhouses served as informal courts where truth was spoken beneath the disguise of steam and water. But those who used them, who whispered across the basins, passed notes with damp hands and stitched meaning into silences, they never questioned it. Here no names are needed, only stories. The calligrapher's wife enters next. She carries no scrolls, no ink, only bread wrapped in cloth. She places it near the warm basin as if feeding something unseen. Then she sits beside you, no words, only presence. Quirky tidbit. There's a proverb from a long-forgotten poet. A woman's voice when folded becomes silk. When sung becomes wind. But when written... And here the manuscript crumbles. The last line lost. You always wondered what it was meant to say. Now you think you know. When written it becomes truth. You spend hours in the hammam. No one asked why. No one asks who you are to be there. You're not the merchant's wife anymore. Not simply the woman with the strange bird. You are the one who listened and remembered and now recorded. When you leave, Garib meets you at the gate, a piece of thread dangling from her beak. You take it gently. Red. No wider than a hair. You turn it in your fingers, and then you tie it to your wrist. You've seen others wear these threads in secret, wrapped twice, always tied with a promise. You do the same. Not because you must, because you can. When you return home, the servants look at you differently, not afraid, just careful. The steward doesn't appear at all. You don't ask why. Instead, you enter the gallery and find a new scroll on the bench, unmarked, inside one sentence. She has flown farther. You don't cry, you don't smile, you just hold the scroll and breathe. Then you walk to the cage one last time. Untie the green ribbon, fold it into your sash, and gently close the door. Not in fear, not in farewell, but in ritual. A mark that a chapter has closed, and the next waits wings ready. That evening the sky opens wide. Not with rain, not with thunder, just with stillness. A pause that wraps itself around the city like silk. You sit on the rooftop once again, Garib nestled beneath your hand, feathers rising and falling in perfect rhythm with your breath. In the distance, a flute plays, a real one this time, not birdsong. The melody floats lazily through the alleys, curving around domes and drifting through shutters half open to the night. You don't know who plays it. You don't need to. The important thing is they're not playing in secret. You've seen the signs all day. A servant girl wearing an embroidered sash bearing the shape of a feather. A water seller whistling a tune from your tapestry. Even a merchant's wife at the spice stall casually placing a green thread-wrapped pouch into another woman's hands. Small, careful, entirely ordinary, and yet revolutionary. You sip from a clay cup milk warmed with honey and a sliver of orange peel. Your grandmother's recipe. One you'd forgotten until Garib began mimicking her voice last week. You wonder now if forgetting is ever truly possible, or if everything we are simply waits for the right melody to bring it back. You turn to Garib. Did you know this would happen? She clicks once, she hoped. Garib tilts her head unbothered. You. Quirky tidbit. In some rare folktales, birds are not messengers but timekeepers. They don't carry words, they carry when things are meant to be said. It's not about language, it's about timing. And when a bird refuses to speak, the tale says it is not yet the hour. Garib sang only when the hour arrived, and now everything hums with that timing. Later that night, you walk through the house with a candle and no fear. You touch things you used to avoid, the heavy spice cabinet. The locked drawer in your husband's study, the thick ledger marked personal and feel no shame. The drawer is empty. The ledger blank. Pages torn out long ago. It doesn't matter. You're not in search of evidence anymore. You are no longer trying to prove anything to anyone. You are only bearing witness. You return to the storeroom not to write but to sew. Not the tapestry this time. A pouch, green silk. Wide enough to carry a scroll or a folded ribbon. Narrow enough to be hidden beneath a robe. You stitch slowly, carefully. And when it is done, you place one item inside a feather. Garib's first. You remember the day she lost it. She'd been sick, her song rasping, her eyes too bright. You'd fed her fig paste and warm water for 3 days. On the 4th, she dropped that feather into your lap and said, "Still here." You didn't understand then. You do now. You place the pouch in your writing chest and lock it. Not to hide it, to keep it safe. A gift for someone who needs a beginning, or a reminder. You move through the rest of the house like a new tenant, rearranging things, restoring others. You untie the silk curtain from the outer door. You push the mosaic fountain to a place where the morning sun will strike it. You take down the mirror in your bedroom, the one that never reflected you quite right, and hang it in the storeroom where your real face has always lived. When you reach the courtyard, you see her. Not the girl from the hammam. Not the woman from the rooftop. You. Sitting beneath the pomegranate tree in your own dream. Hair unbound, hands open, eyes full of sound, and when you blink, she's gone. But the image stays, because you're not just part of the story now. You are the story, and no one can unwrite you. A letter arrives the next day. No seal, no name. Folded linen, not parchment. Inside, a single feather pressed flat and stitched to the cloth with red thread. The thread loops once then twice careful, deliberate. And beside it, in neat embroidery, we heard her. You sit with it for a long time, cross-legged beneath the gallery arch, watching the shadow of the pomegranate tree sway gently against the wall. Garib perches beside you, unusually quiet. Even she knows this message isn't for reply, it's confirmation. You tuck the linen into your robe. You don't need to archive it, it's already sewn into your breath. You begin to tidy the storeroom that afternoon, not to erase but to make space. There's always another woman, another feather, another story waiting its time. You repurpose an old spice chest into a scroll case, fold new blank cloths into a basket, sharpen the reed pens. You find peace in the rhythm. Garib hums softly, fluttering down to the sill. House ready, she chirps. Yes, you say. She is, and you are too. That evening, the calligrapher's wife returns. She doesn't knock, just appears at the courtyard gate with a packet under her arm and a knowing glint in her eye. I've brought something, she says. Inside the parcel, a small bronze stamp, cool and heavy. Carved into its face, the profile of a bird in flight. One wing extended, the other folded into its side. You'll need a seal of your own, she says simply. You don't ask why. You know. You run your thumb across the carving and imagine pressing it into wax into memory. Historians still argue whether such seals were ever real if women left marks of their own, or merely used the insignias of husbands and fathers. But your hand itches to use it, to mark the pages you'll pass on, to say, this came from me. That night, a new voice joins the rooftop songs. You can't see her, but the melody winds through the alleys like a ribbon in water, smooth and deep and old. She doesn't mimic, doesn't quote. She adds a verse you don't recognize, but one you instantly understand. Garib lifts her head, listens, then repeats one word, east. You nod. So the story spreads again, toward the mountains, toward the river towns, toward cities where no one yet remembers they are stitched into this same tapestry. You sit by the open window and begin writing on fresh cloth. Your hands calm, your mind clear. Not a journal, not a letter, a map. Not of places, of voices. Each stitch marks a rooftop, a room, a woman, a whisper. You call it the House of Feathered Names. You don't explain why, you don't have to. Quirky tidbit. Some scholars believe the term household in early records was a euphemism for something else entirely. Networks of silent resistance structured not by lineage but by memory. Women who remembered, who sang, who stitched, who listened. Tonight your house feels bigger than walls, bigger than the garden, bigger than the city. Garib lands on the window ledge, tapping the seal gently with her beak. Yours, she says. You nod, and finally press it into a dish of wax-soft clay. The mark is clean, crisp, unmistakable, and deeply yours. When the wax cools, you place it atop the folded pouch in your writing chest. Another offering for the next woman who will need it. She may come tomorrow, or next year, or when the jasmine vines have grown too thick to see the window's edge. But she will come, and when she does, the house will be ready. The days pass gently now. The urgency has softened, not disappeared, but folded into something else. Like thread tucked into a hem not visible, but still holding everything together. Your mornings begin with the same quiet rituals, grinding spices, feeding Garib slices of fig, sweeping the courtyard while the sun slides across the mosaic tiles. But something hums underneath it all. A readiness, a listening. Garib no longer mimics as often. Instead, she offers single words in the middle of your tasks. Sometimes they're nonsense, turnip. 3 boats, sleeps upright. But sometimes they carry the weight of a bell. Yesterday she whispered, "She's here. You found no one at the gate." But that didn't mean she was wrong. Historians still argue whether the homes of prominent women, especially merchants' wives, functioned as informal schools. Not of arithmetic or scriptures, but of stories, rumors, codes, traditions passed not by lesson, but by gesture. Your home has become one. You do not advertise it. You simply open the door. One afternoon, a girl arrives, 12, maybe 13. Narrow shoulders, fierce eyes. She doesn't speak at first. Just hands you a pouch. Inside a feather. Blue-gray. Curled at the tip. Not Garib's. And a scrap of cloth. Embroidered with a phrase she woke in a cage she didn't build. You nod. You don't ask her name. You only lead her to the storeroom and show her the linen, the threads, the gold ink that fades. You place your seal in her hand and say, try. She sits cross-legged, awkward at first, but her hand steadies after a few strokes. Garib hops once across the cloth, then settles. The girl works in silence for over an hour. When she finishes, she doesn't read it aloud. She only hands it to you folded once and says, keep it until I return. You nod. You place it in the writing chest. Later that evening, the wind changes. Not wildly, just enough to knock a ceramic cup from the gallery wall. It rolls across the floor and cracks, but doesn't break. Garib watches it, then says, storm not yet. You look at her, then to the sky. Cloudless, still. But you've learned not to question her timing. Instead, you climb the stairs to the rooftop, bringing with you a new strip of cloth and the pouch containing the first feather she gave you. You lay them out beneath the lantern, and begin again. This time, you stitch a question. Just one. What happens when the bird stops singing? You leave it unfinished. You let the wind toy with the edges. You let the night sit with it. Quirky tidbit. Some versions of ancient lullabies included questions instead of answers. Riddles meant not for children, but for the mothers singing them. It was believed that if a woman asked the right question while rocking her child, the wind would carry an answer before morning. You hum one now. Garib joins in soft and low, and though the wind carries no reply, it leaves behind a petal from a flower you didn't plant. You pick it up, tuck it into the pouch, and smile. Because even unanswered questions deserve safekeeping. That night, the moon hangs heavy and yellow like a lantern left too long in the sky. You sit by the rooftop edge, the unfinished cloth spread beside you, the petal folded gently into your palm. Garib perches silently on the parapet, her feathers catching starlight in hues that shimmer like secrets. You do not stitch. Not tonight. You watch. Below, the alleys seem to exhale. Doors close, oil lamps blink out, and the city tucks itself into its usual sleep. But the rooftops remain alive. A whisper here, a note there. A flicker of motion too graceful for a cat. You recognize it now, the rooftop network. Still growing, still gliding. You used to wonder whether you were alone. Now you wonder just how many you've never seen, and how many saw you long before you saw them. Garib rustles her wings. You look to her. She says he watches again. Your heart doesn't race. Not anymore? You rise, return to the railing, and scan the shadows below. There. The outline of a man? A tall one, half concealed behind the olive vendor's canopy. Still. Waiting. The new servant? No. He's gone. Disappeared without a trace after your fire. This one's different. You recognize the stance, not official, not military, observant, patient. But he underestimates you. You turn back to Garib and say, sing only half. She understands. She launches from the parapet not with fear, but with precision, circling above the rooftops in wide arcs. Her song begins soft, halting, incomplete. To anyone listening, it's beautiful, but fractured. To those who know, it's a warning. A map with pieces missing. You return to the gallery and retrieve the linen with your question. What happens when the birds stop singing? You complete it now, in smaller, tighter stitches. Then the women begin. You tie off the thread and roll the cloth into a scroll. No need for a seal tonight, it's not meant to stay here. You place it beside the front door wrapped in plain cotton. A gift for whoever dares step close enough. Then you wait. Not for a knock, but for footsteps. You light no lamps. The night will do. Quirky tidbit. In certain desert caravans, it was tradition for women to leave coded bundles by the roadside, not for enemies or allies, but for future travelers who might one day need a map without a name. These bundles always contained 3 things: something warm, something written, and something that had once flown. You have left all 3, and sometime before dawn the scroll is gone. No disturbance, no broken pot, no whispered warning from Garib. Just absence. A clean, complete absence. When you rise with the sun, you find a single scrap left in its place. A ribbon. Red. Untied. You smile. You don't need a reply to know it was understood. Later that day, a girl arrives at your gate, not the same one from before, but younger still. Barefoot, holding nothing. She says, "You don't know me." You nod. You know her. She asks, pointing upward at Garib, who watches from the courtyard fig tree. "I do, you say?" "I heard her last week," the girl whispers. "In a dream. She was inside my pillow." You open the door wide. She steps inside. You place a piece of cloth in her hand and a thimble on her smallest finger. You don't ask what she wants to say. You simply say, "Here we speak in stitches." She smiles, not like a child, like someone who already remembers. She learns quickly. The little girl with the dream in her pillow sits beneath the fig tree all morning, legs tucked under her brow, furrowed with focus. The cloth trembles in her lap, not from fear but anticipation. Garib circles lazily above, occasionally glancing down with one eye as though marking her progress. You sit nearby, weaving rosemary into braids for drying, pretending not to watch. But of course you are. You watch the way her fingers fumble at first, then find their rhythm. The way she tongues the corner of her mouth like it helps her think. The way she holds the needle, not like a tool, but like a quill. By midday, she has finished her first line. It's crooked, slanted, a little too tight. It is perfect. She holds it up to you. 3 words, "I am here." You nod once slowly. That's all any of us need to say, you tell her. She grins, not the wide, unshaped smile of a child, but something quieter, more certain. She ties off her thread and places the cloth beside the others in the chest. Then she asks the question you've been waiting for. May I stay? Historians still argue whether homes like yours became sanctuaries or schools. The answer, of course, depends on who tells the story. Some claim women offered shelter to those with messages too dangerous to deliver. Others say the houses were just myths, fabricated comfort for uncomfortable truths. But this house is real, and she stays. You give her the smallest chamber, the one with the cracked tile and the hummingbird, painted on the door. She decorates it with string and bells and one drawing of Garib, drawn on scrap parchment with crushed pomegranate ink. At night, you hear her humming to herself. Not your song, her own. Garib begins to follow her during the day. Not always, just enough. Enough to learn her rhythm. Enough to teach her that silence is not absence, it is invitation. You stitch a new corner on the tapestry for her. Not her face, not yet, just a braid. A single thick plait tied with green. That's how it begins. One evening she appears in the gallery with a folded scroll. She says, "A woman gave this to me in the market." She said it was for you, but only if I earned it. You raise an eyebrow. And did you? She nods. I didn't answer her question. I asked her a better one. You smile. You open the scroll. Inside a poem. No signature, no date, no mark. Just a line that stops your breath. When the cage forgets the bird remembers the sky. You place the scroll in your writing chest, not folded, laid flat. Quirky tidbit. In certain nomadic cultures, songs were recorded not in ink but in knots. Strips of wool woven into loops, each knot representing a breath, a beat, a pause. When unrolled by firelight, the knots could be followed like footsteps through a memory. You begin tying knots now. Small cords of linen wrapped around your finger and set on the sill. Each one a day, each one a lesson. The little girl sees you, watches, and begins tying her own. One night she brings you a bundle of them. They're all the things I've heard her say she tells you, nodding toward Garib. But not when she's speaking, when she's quiet. You untie the first. The thread falls open into silence. You smile, because that too is a kind of truth. The house hums now, not with voices, but with movement. The rhythm of footfalls across mosaic stone, the soft scratch of reed pens, the occasional rustle of a scroll being gently unrolled. Birds, more than just Garib, come and go through open windows and half-shuttered arches. Not all stay. They perch, they watch, they carry threads in their beaks. Even the servants, those who once kept their eyes low and steps hushed, have changed. One leaves fresh figs not in the kitchen but beside the tapestry chest. Another rearranges cushions in patterns that mirror the stitchwork of bird wings. The household breathes differently. No one calls it a school, no one calls it a resistance. But everyone knows. You spend your mornings with the girl from the hammam, now returned as though she never vanished. She has grown into her silence not out of fear, but mastery. When she speaks, it's with precision, like threading a needle through a strand of thought. Today, she shows you a new stitch zigzag meant to represent uncertainty. You practice on the edge of your tapestry. The needle slips, then catches, then moves in rhythm with the memory behind it. You're learning backwards, she teases. You glance up. Isn't that how we remember? She nods. And you both laugh, not the cautious laughter of women who fear being overheard, but the laughter that ripples through courtyards like wind through linen. Garib lands beside you, says nothing, just watches. Then slowly she lifts one foot, revealing something tucked into her claws, a piece of parchment, torn at the edges, curled from time. You unfurl it. Inside, another message. This one not embroidered, not stitched. Written, in ink that glows faintly gold. She knows. That's all. No name, no context. Just she. You glance to the girl from the hammam. She shrugs. Maybe that's the point. You study the parchment again. Is it a threat? A confirmation? A reassurance? You think of all the women who now hum when they carry water, who leave feathers in doorways, who stitch nothing into everything. Yes, she knows. Whoever she is, wherever she is, and what's more, she remembers. Quirky tidbit. In some port cities, sailors swore by the practice of placing coated feathers in the hems of garments sewn by lovers or sisters. The direction of the feather's quill indicated whether the message was of joy, grief, or danger. 3 feathers facing north. She's alive and waiting. You've never been to sea, but the wind tonight smells like salt. You go to the roof. The little girl your student now follows. Together you lay out the new feathers brought by the day's visitors. Some marked with tiny glyphs, others plain, all significant. Each one is placed on the stone parapet like an offering. Then you hum. She joins you. Garib adds her note. And for a moment the sky answers. Not with thunder, but with light. A star streaks overhead. The girl gasps. You whisper, "Make a wish." She shakes her head. No need, it's already happening. Below the city dreams. Above the birds fly. And beside you a child becomes a keeper. Of songs. Of silence. Of everything no one thought would survive. The next morning someone knocks at the back gate. Not the front, not the alley door. The gate only the family used once upon a time, back when the house entertained guests who came bearing bolts of silk and boxes of saffron. It hasn't opened in years. You press a palm to it, gently feel the warmth of the rising sun against the wood. Then you open it. The woman standing there is neither old nor young. Her hair is streaked with gray tied back in a long braid, and her eyes, deep serious, are the color of cracked almond shells. She wears traveling robes, dusty, heavy, and around her wrist a red ribbon, untied. You step back, you don't speak. She does. I'm looking for a house that listens. You nod. You found it, you let her in. She carries a small satchel tied shut with a copper pin in the shape of a songbird. Garib lands nearby and chirps softly, no mimicry, just greeting. The woman nods to her. I've followed her voice for weeks, she says, her fingers brushing the copper pin. Thought it was a memory. Turns out it was a map. She sits in the gallery without being asked, the way women who've already earned their place do. I brought something, she says, from the north. From her satchel, she draws a cloth-wrapped bundle. She unfolds it slowly. Inside, a length of linen embroidered with script, tight looping old. Older than your thread, older than your house, nearly faded to nothing, but you know it instantly. The script from the book, The Calligrapher's Wife, gave you the one with the birds and the trees, the woman by the stream. You reach for the cloth. Your fingers graze hers. The linen is soft, thin, worn like skin. The woman leans closer. She was my grandmother, the first to leave. She made me promise if I heard the song again I'd follow. You lay the cloth on the gallery floor. Your student joins you, the girl now nearly silent, watching with reverent eyes. The symbols match yours. Not perfectly, but intimately. You begin translating aloud, line by line. Each phrase is a verse you've heard before, echoed in dreams, murmured by Garib, whispered in stairwells. But some are new. One reads, "When the wings beat faster, so does the remembering." Another, "She who forgets her voice forgets her name." And finally, "Leave a feather where you're heard." You fold the cloth and place it beside the tapestry. Later, the woman from the north helps teach a new stitch to your student. Not with thread, with pressure. She presses her thumb into a fresh sheet of parchment, leaves a mark. Then another just beside it. Thumbprints, she says. Ours. Unmistakable. The girl does the same. You follow. Then you draw a tiny bird beneath yours, wings extended. Garib lands on the desk and presses her foot into the soft clay dish. Her claw print joins yours, a strange living seal. Quirky tidbit. In a collection of outlawed scrolls recovered from a collapsed archive near Kashan, a single passage reads, "The house is not a place. It is a pulse." Scholars once thought it was metaphorical. Now you know better. That night there is no singing. Not from the rooftops, not from Garib. Only silence. But it's not empty. It's rich. Full of threads being pulled tight across rooftops, of scrolls being unwrapped in candlelight, of feathers falling in places no one's yet dared to name. You light one lantern in the rooftop niche. Your student places a green ribbon in the open cage. The woman from the north wraps the copper pin around the fig tree's trunk. And you sit at the tapestry and add one more stitch. Not a face, not a name, a flame. Small, eternal. The wind shifts the next morning. Not a storm, but something just as alive. The kind of wind that lifts laundry before it's dry, scatters petals into forgotten corners, and makes shutters knock gently as if they too want to be let in on the secret. You feel it the moment you wake. It threads through your robe as you rise, curls under the soles of your feet, and stirs the corners of every room. Garib has already sensed it. She's perched by the tapestry chest, silent but alert. One claw resting on the corner of the folded linen brought by the woman from the north. She's close, she murmurs. Who you ask, even though you already know. Garib doesn't answer. Instead, she flies to the rooftop. You follow. There, in the soft gold light of early sun, the girl your student stands barefoot, her eyes narrowed against the breeze. She holds something in her hands. You move closer. A letter, not parchment. Cloth again, but this time written in your own thread. It's your message. When the cage forgets the bird remembers the sky. Ah, it's been returned. The threads are worn, but beside your words a second line has been added, stitched in dark blue. And when the bird forgets the sky, the wind reminds her. You both stare at it? You're not sure whether to be comforted or warned. Then the girl speaks. I think she's coming here. You nod. Down in the courtyard, the door knocks once. Not twice. Not a pattern. Just once. You descend quietly, barefoot like the girl robe, whispering across the tiles. You open the door, and she is there. The servant who vanished. The one who watched you. But she is not who you thought. She's a woman. You see it now, how she passed as a man. The tucked chin, the measured walk, the silence. All of it armor, and now standing with no veil, no robe, nothing but dust and breath and the red ribbon tied firmly around her wrist, she is whole. I've come back, she says. Not for forgiveness, for remembering. You step aside. She enters the house like someone returning to a place they buried themselves in long ago. Garib lands on her shoulder. The woman closes her eyes. She taught me, she whispers. The bird. When I watched, she sang the names of those I had forgotten. I didn't know what to do with them. So I ran. And now you ask. Now I want to sew. She sleeps in the quiet room for 2 days. You leave food and thread at her door. On the third day, she emerges face pale but hand steady. She carries the green ribbon from the cage, now stitched with names. Not hers. Yours. The girl's. The calligrapher's wife. And one more. A name you don't know. You ask. She answers. She was my sister. They took her voice. So I took their map. Quirky tidbit. In several banned poetic fragments from Shiraz, there's mention of sister knots codes sewn into shared linens between girls parted by marriage or exile. They used patterns of tension in thread to convey emotion, tight stitches for warning, loose for sorrow, knotted for survival. The woman begins to teach you those stitches. You write them down with Garib perched at your elbow, correcting your notes with low chirps and approving clicks. At night, the wind grows stronger. The rooftop becomes a living library. Women come quietly. They don't stay. They add a braid here, a pressed flower, a broken piece of clay with words scratched faintly in ink. One leaves a whisper. The mountains are listening now. You nod. You've always known the wind would carry farther than feathers ever could. That evening, the servant-turned-sister brings you a small box. Inside 3 feathers, all gray, all smooth, all bound with gold thread. These are for you, she says. Why, you'll know when it's time to fly. And with that, she disappears again. This time not from fear, from purpose. You climb to the rooftop and press 1 gray feather into the seam of the lantern. Then light it. Just once. Long enough for someone far away to see it. Long enough to say, we are still here. You begin waking earlier now, before the call to prayer. Before the girl stirs in her bedroll. Before Garib begins her morning song checks, those soft murmurs and repeated syllables, she hums like a choir warming up. You rise before all of it, lighting no lamp, needing none. The house glows in pre-dawn hush, the kind of light that makes things appear older, wiser. Every surface feels like it's waiting to be remembered. In the storeroom, you find the tapestry exactly as you left it, yet different. A corner has been folded down. You didn't fold it. You smooth it back gently and discover a new stitch. A single curve of dark blue thread, nothing more. No name, no face. Just the wingtip of a bird mid-turn trailing golden thread like smoke. You say nothing, not even to Garib. Instead, you spend the morning preparing the ink. Not gold this time. Red. Bright as memory. Sharp as breath held too long. You fill the reed pen's trim new parchment, lay fresh linen on the writing bench. Later, when the girl joins you, her eyes still soft from sleep, she glances once at the ink and says, "This is for warnings." You nod. She sits beside you and begins stitching again, this time with quicker hands. You felt it too, you ask. She doesn't look up. I heard nothing, she says. But the silence changed shape. That evening, a new bird arrives. Not Garib's kind. Sleeker, rust-colored, unfamiliar. It lands on the balcony and waits. In its claws, a strip of cloth. You approach slowly. It doesn't flinch. You untie the cloth. Inside, a knot of threads, green, red, and black. A simple cipher. The calligrapher's wife appears within the hour. She holds the cloth, turns it over, reads the message aloud in a whisper. The desert houses are rising. You feel it in your spine. A heat, a gravity. Do they need us, the girl asks. No, you say. But they need to know we remember them. That night you prepare the pouch. The one with the feather, the cloth, the signature pressed in fading wax. You wrap it in silk. Add a sliver of turmeric bark, your signal for open without fear. And leave it on the outer gate. Garib stays close to it all evening, watching coiled like smoke. It's gone by dawn. Quirky tidbit traders in the old southern routes used to leave trust bundles in alcoves along cliff paths. Silk packets containing spices, gold powder, or simply words. The act of leaving one was an invitation. I trust you to receive this with care. You trust now, because the women in the desert are writing back. Messages begin to arrive like dust on your steps. Tiny petals, beads sewn into scraps, even the sound of flutes played just so in the distance. Each one a thread, and threads gather. You spend hours copying new stitches into the master tapestry. Garib begins mimicking names you don't know. Sometimes full names. Sometimes only sounds echoes of women you've never met. But you understand them anyway. And you add them. One stitch at a time. The girl watches. She doesn't ask where the tapestry ends. She's starting to suspect it doesn't. You finish each night the same way, one stitch. One knot. One whisper into Garib's feathers. And then you sleep curled beside your writing chest, the scent of thread and fire ink braided into your dreams. Tonight you dream of wings so wide they eclipse the house, and of a voice yours speaking a name you haven't said in years. Not yours, hers, your mother. Saying sing when they try to hush you, so you do. The rains arrive not in torrents but in thoughtful drizzles. The kind that soak, slowly drawing the scent of wet stone and jasmine into every corridor. You place clay jars beneath the eaves to catch the water as your grandmother once did. When they fill, you pour them into the basin with care, like each drop carries a memory worth saving. Garib hates the rain. She puffs up like a damp scroll, hopping from sill to beam, grumbling softly under her breath. But she doesn't leave your side, not once, because she too can sense it now. The change isn't coming, it's already here. You light no fire that morning. The ink flows easier when it's cold. You write with your knees tucked beneath you the reed pen, whispering across parchment. The girl sits opposite, her hair tied back with a silver ribbon, a gift from the calligrapher's wife who now visits every third day without explanation. You all pretend she's simply passing through, but no one believes that anymore. Today the girl writes a list, not of names, of places. Taverns where women hum old lullabies. Courtyards where feathers are found folded into washing lines. Wells where messages are exchanged with a nod and a basket of oranges. At the bottom of the list she draws a spiral. Around it she writes, "These are not separate stories. This is one house." You copy the spiral onto linen, then stitch it into the tapestry's border where the edges no longer matter. Because truthfully, the edges left long ago. Quirky tidbit. In the folklore of the High Plains, there's a story about a house that stretches with each tale told within it. Some say its rooftop eventually covered an entire city. Others insist it folded in on itself like a book hiding its rooms inside the hearts of those who pass through. No two people saw the same doorway, but every doorway remembered them. You walk the gallery that afternoon, touching door frames, whispering names into the quiet. Not just women you've known, women you've heard of. The woman who carved verses into olive pits. The mother who taught her daughter to braid syllables into her hair. The singer who went silent for 40 years, then sang once at her own funeral. You say their names anyway. Even the ones without syllables. Even the ones lost to time. Garib perches on your shoulder. "You're making a storm," she says. "No," you whisper. "I'm stitching an arc." That night the storm does come, this time fierce. Winds rattle the shutters. Water pools across the mosaic floor. The fig tree bows and weeps. But no one runs. You gather the girl, the calligrapher's wife, and two of those women who've found refuge here, one of them. The young mother from the hammam, now bold-eyed and steady. You all sit in the storeroom with the tapestry. You unroll it slowly. It stretches the entire wall now. It has grown beyond your thread, beyond your fingers. Some of these stitches were not yours. You can see it. They are slightly uneven, done with different tension, with different rhythm. You don't correct them, you let them live. Each woman lays a hand on the cloth. The girl adds one last stitch, just a single line. A horizon, no sun, no moon. Just the suggestion of distance. And above it, in the space that's always been waiting, she writes, "We begin again." Outside, the storm howls. Inside, the house does not flinch. The tapestry, damp at its edges, pulses like breath. When the rain stops, the air is thick with petrichor and possibility. You step outside into a garden, freshly washed, the earth dark and glistening. Fallen blossoms float in the courtyard basin like tiny boats. Somewhere above, a dove coos once, then falls silent again, knowing perhaps that now is the hour for listening, not for declarations. The girl, now taller than she was when she first arrived, appears in the doorway behind you. She's wrapped in a shawl stitched with every thread color your household has used. She does not speak. Instead, she hands you a folded cloth. No writing, no symbol, just a blank, clean square of linen. You nod. A message without words is still a message. She gestures toward the far wall of the gallery, one you've left bare until now. It's time, she says. You take the cloth and begin. Not with ink, not with thread, with ash. You dip your fingers into the cooled remnants of last night's lantern, rub the soot between your thumbs until it stains. Then slowly you press your palm to the wall. One print, then another. 5 in total, forming an arc. Beneath them you draw a bird in flight. Not perfect, not planned, but unmistakably yours. You look over your shoulder. The girl joins you, pressing her hand beside yours, smaller, more precise. Then the others do too, one by one. Even Garib leaves a talon mark etched into the ash with quiet ceremony. You all step back. The wall speaks, without saying a thing. Historians still argue whether women left traces like this, whether the markings in back rooms and hammams were decoration or declaration. But the debate misses the point. Some signs are not meant to be understood. They're meant to be felt, like this one. That afternoon, a knock. 2 short, 1 long. A rhythm known only to those who have listened closely for years. You open the door. A stranger stands there, older, weather-worn, cloaked in mud and poetry. She carries a small cage in her hand, empty. She says, "I've come to return her voice," and hands you a scroll. It is sealed not in wax, but thread green and red, knotted into a pattern you instantly recognize. You do not open it yet. You place it on the writing table. You light a small lamp beside it, just enough flame to remind it it's welcome. And leave it there until night. Quirky tidbit. In a few rare burial sites along the southern coast, archaeologists uncovered linen scrolls buried with the dead. Not prayers, but messages written to the living. Some were full of riddles, others simple instructions. Keep singing, feed the birds. Tell her story right, you tell it now. You gather the house in the courtyard under stars scrubbed clean by storm. You unroll the scroll. Inside a verse stitched with care, I sang alone until I heard you echo. Garib hums low. The girl lifts her chin. And you weary, joyful, endless, you begin to sing. Not the old melody. A new one. It doesn't rhyme. It doesn't repeat. It only remembers. And it carries. From courtyard to rooftop. From rooftop to alley. From alley to desert wind. Until the whole city hums with the sound of women who have never met yet know each other by the way their stories stitch together in silence. A week passes. The scroll remains on your table unrolled, read and reread, until its fibers soften with oil from your fingertips. You think maybe it wasn't meant to be preserved, just felt. Absorbed, like mist on skin. Outside the market returns to rhythm, but softer somehow. As if every shout is mindful of its echo. As if the pigeons on the awnings are not just birds, but lookouts, listeners, echoes of a time when messages wore feathers. Inside your home, the tapestry is finished. You did not decide that. It decided for you. One morning you step into the gallery and there it is, complete. You hadn't stitched the final mark. No one had. But somehow they're woven with gold so pale it glows only in angled light as a simple spiral. The same one your student once drew. At its center, not a bird, a flame. Small, gentle, unburning. It is enough. You don't hang the tapestry anymore. You roll it, wrap it in muslin, and place it in the cedar chest. The girl watches head tilted and asks only, "Where will it go?" "Wherever the next whisper needs it," you say. That afternoon, the old woman from the north returns. She's not alone. 2 others follow her, one wearing boots caked with salt, the other with eyes like new ink. Neither speak, but both carry pouches. Both wear feathers sewn into their sleeves. You feed them, offer fig bread, fresh cheese tea brewed with cinnamon. When the sun begins to fall, you gather in the courtyard. You unroll a fresh linen sheet. Blank, unmarked. A new beginning. You place it between you all, and you wait. The girl is the first to move. She dips a reed into green ink and writes one word again, then passes it on. The woman from the Salt Coast writes next. Her word is stranger. Stillness. Then the third. Carry. And you hesitate. Then write remember. Quirky tidbit. Among nomadic weavers in the Zagros Mountains, communal tapestries were begun only after the first snowfall. The women would gather in silence, and each thread added was a single word of intention. When the snow melted, the tapestry was burned, not lost, but believed to have returned its message to the sky. You won't burn this one, but you will carry it. That evening you give the girl your satchel. Inside ink thread scrolls a single gray feather wrapped in silk. She hugs you, not tight, not desperate, just long enough to say thank you. Garib hops onto her shoulder, settles in. No mimicking you whisper. Let her write her own songs. Garib clicks once. Understood. At the gate the girl turns and says, "What if I forget the tune?" "You won't," you reply. "But even if you do, you'll still remember the thread." She walks into the dusk. One girl, one bird, one message stitched across sky, and you return to your rooftop. You light no lamp. You hum no tune. You just breathe. Because tonight is not for making, it is for being. And the stars, those ink-flecked, gold-threaded stars, are already telling your story for you. You grow quieter in these final days. Not from age, not entirely, but from a kind of fullness that needs no voice. The house has grown quieter too, though not empty. The sounds have simply changed. Where once there were the soft clinks of needles in baskets and the dry whisper of parchment, now you hear the rustling of trees and the faint brush of wind across stone. The girl doesn't return. Not yet. And that is how it should be. The tapestry chest remains sealed, the cedar scent faint but persistent, as if guarding something ancient. You've tucked a new message beneath its lining, a single line, stitched in the palest thread you could find. If you find this, you were meant to. You do not wait for anyone to find it. Instead, you write again this time, not for the house, not for the city, for her, your mother, the one who taught you the first stitch by candlelight. You write not on cloth, but on the inside of the garden wall. Small curved letters. Discreet. I remembered. You don't sign it. If she sees, she'll know. If she doesn't, the wind might. You spend your evenings watching the fig tree bloom again early this year. The bees hum differently now, as if the flowers have secrets worth guarding. A neighbor girl appears at your gate sometimes to bring fresh water, and you teach her nothing. You simply let her sit in the sun beside you because that is enough. Quirky tidbit? In certain mountain towns, the final gift from an elder was a silent one. A cup of tea placed beside a closed window, left to cool as the birds sang. No farewell, no name, just the warmth of something left behind. You begin leaving tea, 1 cup each day, by the gallery threshold. Sometimes it's gone by nightfall, sometimes not. You never check which days. You just keep pouring. Historians still argue whether the women who sang to birds left behind legacies or only rumors, whether the tapestries were real or simply metaphors folded into tales to comfort the lonely. But you know the truth, because you held the thread. You followed the knot. You stitched in silence while others slept. And in doing so, you became a song, a soft, unfinished one, meant to be echoed, not completed. Tonight the sky is soft again, the stars bright. Garib perches nearby, feathers sleek watching. She says nothing. You say nothing. Together you listen. Because far away, carried faintly on the wind, a voice sings. Young, sure, and you recognize it. Not because of what it says, but because of how it says it. With breath between syllables. With thread between words. With love. Always love. And now, dear listener, let all of that drift behind your eyes like the last curl of smoke from an evening lamp. Let the stitches fade into softness. Let the rooftops blur and the feathers settle. You've followed a path threaded with silence, with whispers, with forgotten names, stitched back into the fabric of memory. You've stood at the edge of rooftops, watched lanterns blink once in the dark. And you've understood that stories don't end. They fold, like cloth, like wings, like lullabies. So breathe deeper now. Let your chest rise slowly and fall. Let your fingers curl gently into your sheets like they might find a scrap of old linen, still warm from the hands of someone who remembered you before you remembered yourself. The wind is gentle now. The house is quiet. The ink is dry. The tea is warm. Everything has been left just so on purpose for you. You were meant to hear this. You were meant to feel the thread. And tomorrow, if you wish, you can carry it further. But for now, just rest. Let the stars be your stitches. Let the birds hum you to sleep. And let yourself be a page in someone else's song. Good night. End of script. Sweet dreams.